Okay, I'll call the order the Sparks City Council meeting of May 26, 2020 with a roll call, please.
Mayor Smith.
Here.
Council members Abbott.
Here.
Lawson.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Bybee.
Here.
Dare.
Here.
City Attorney Adams.
Check, you're muted. There you go.
Here.
He's here.
City Manager Kreutz.
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Okay, opening ceremonies. We do not have an invocation speaker today, but we can do the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Kreutz, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag, of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil. Okay, Lisa, do you want to read your statement, please?
I certainly will, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Due to the social distancing requirements enacted in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the City of Sparks City Council meetings will be hosted in this virtual setting until further notice. The safety of Sparks residents, employees, and elected officials are important to us, and we appreciate your patience as we journey through this virtual meeting together. The City of Sparks uses Zoom, a third-party app, for its virtual meetings and does not control its technical specifications or requirements. Your ability to participate in public comment during this meeting may be impacted by factors like the type of device you use, the strength of your internet or cellular signal, and the company that provides your internet or cellular service. The City of Sparks is not responsible if you are not able to participate in a meeting through Zoom due to any of these factors. For those of you watching and listening from home, general public comment will be announced for items 4 and 12.1. If you wish to speak during general public comment, you will need to call in using the phone number or meeting link provided on the City Council agenda. Public comment will not be permitted on social media outlets. Public comment will also be announced for public hearing items 10.1 and 11.1. You will be muted upon entry to the waiting room, and our clerk's office staff will admit you to the meeting. If you would like to speak during public comment items, press *9 when prompted from your telephone, or click the button to raise your hand from your computer. You will be called upon to speak one at a time by your name or by the telephone number that you are calling from. No video callers will be admitted to the meeting. When you are called on to speak for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name, and you will have 3 minutes. Any person who disrupts the meeting to the extent that it is disorderly conduct will be removed from the meeting. Thank you again for joining us, and Mr. Mayor, it's all yours.
Thank you. We'll go to item number 4, public comment. I'll open up the public comment period. Anybody waiting to speak? Lisa?
So I will again remind everybody, if you would like to speak during public comment, to press *9 from your telephone to raise your hand, or to indicate your hand raised during or on your computer. And it looks like we do have one, Mr. Mayor, and I also have looks like 4 emails.
Okay, so do you want to call them by name, Lisa?
Yep, give me just 1 second. So it looks like public comment from telephone number 775-376-0392. Please state your name, and your time will begin as soon as you start.
Greetings, Council, City Council, and members and staff. My name is Dan Flanagan.
Welcome, Dan.
My name is Dan Flanagan. Hi, how are you? How's everybody today?
Good, thank you.
Say, I know we've got my 3 minutes here. What I'm calling about is case number PCN 19-0040, the Five Ridges subdivision project. We had, we live adjacent. We've lived in the area for over 35 to 40 years. Right adjacent to where this is being built, and we've watched the planning from day one out here. And we've got a problem with the highways. We've got some problems on the planning ends that's occurred over the years. So the reason I filed an appeal for the Sparks Planning Commission is, first of all, we didn't, myself and several of my neighbors, we tried to call in like we're doing right now, and it didn't work. So we couldn't make any comments at that time. And we just have some major concerns when it goes way back when this was the Quarry subdivision. And our major concerns with that is I had worked with Karen Melby for quite some time when it was the Quarry project. And Karen said that they were in the midst of revising section 2004011, the Slopes and Hilltop Ridges Ordinance. And before any of the subdivisions were going to be approved right in our backyard there, that particular ordinance was going to be amended as part of the special use or the initial project approval prior for it being approved. So when she retired, so did that requirement to amend that section 2004011. This is a significant ridge line in our area, and our concern is it's not even on the ordinance map. And we would like this subdivision to be stayed or postponed until it can be properly addressed how they're going to deal with the hillside issues in this area. And Karen and I had spoken many times about this, and I had informed all my neighbors via our email, and then suddenly she was gone, so was the need to amend this section. The second item is also the amount of traffic that is going to be encumbered at that intersection that connects the Sun Valley to Pyramid Highway. It's completely congested. That particular road I use quite often to go to the other areas, and it is overloaded as it sits right now. And there was requirements originally when that was the quarry, the actual aggregate pit. We had worked with the Washoe County Planning Commission, and I had just gotten the information today, and you should have copies of that initial findings of that meeting. That meeting made it very specific that the ridges were not going to be disturbed, but that was never part of the annexation process that was given before this property was annexed. And that's under code number chapter 2005 administration, number H. Washoe County,
hey,
I don't know
Dan?
who dropped the ball. Yeah.
Dan, finish up your remarks. Your 3 minutes are up. Finish up.
Okay, well, that's major concerns, hillside traffic, and the encumbrance that's going to be created for Pyramid Highway.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Karen, I'm sorry, Lisa.
That's okay. We have another public comment from telephone number 775-742-4479. Please state your name and your 3 minutes will begin once you have done so.
My name is Rock Cole. I've lived here for 24 years, had the property for 27 years. Back in 1998, Granite was trying to put a pit back there. We went to several informal meetings and, of course, the Planning Commission meeting, which Washoe County at that point. And we were told, and I have documentation, I'm hoping you guys got it because we sent it in, although it might have been a little too late. Minutes from the meeting that state that is a protected ridge behind our house. Now, what I'm talking about is our ridge. The tentative map shows future building up here. I know we're arguing we're on the other parcel right now, but this is for our ridge. And we were promised that was a protected ridge back then. And we have the documentation. I think you guys took it into your sphere of influence around 2002. And we also have a document that states the city had to uphold the requirements of the previous, of the parcel that they took under their sphere of influence. Now, in my mind, that should still be there. I don't know that much, and I know that things can go away with a swipe of a pen, but there's some credibility issues here. Shouldn't that ridge line that we were promised, shouldn't that still be protected? I know both Washoe County and City Sparks have the same type of verbiage in their hillside ordinance, and they talk about rock outcroppings. Has staff, anybody even looked at this parcel? There is significant rock outcroppings on that ridge line. I have a huge one above my house, and the developer wants to doze that under for the sake of some view lots. That's not right. And if you guys lived here, I'm pretty sure you would say the same thing, but you don't. I understand that. But I spoke to Christopher in length, and he said that you don't automatically side with a developer, that you stick to ordinances. And you know what? You have ordinances in place. You need to study this parcel. It was never studied. I have a memo I emailed with Scott Christie from the Planning Commission, and this is a quote from his email. With respect to my comments on the hillside ordinance, what I was trying to say is the property was annexed into the system well after the city's hillside ordinance was adopted. The city annexed this property about 3 to 4 years ago, while the hillside development ordinance was adopted about 20 years ago. The hillside ordinance identifies significant ridgelines and hillsides in the city where development is not allowed. But because this property was not anticipated to be added to the city when the ordinance went through, there are no protected hillsides or ridges in this area. My hope is that our staff will take my comments to heart and update the ordinance to further protect significant ridge lines and newly annexed areas in the city. This ridge line has blue sky behind it. There's no other hills behind it to break up your view. What do sensitive
Rod,
okay,
excuse me. Finish up your comments if you would.
Okay, what do sensitive earth tone colors and ridge lines? How does that break up blue sky? Please come look at this ridge line. It's significant in anybody's book.
Thank you, Rod. Appreciate it. Lisa, is there anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not showing anybody else, but I do have 4 emailed public comments.
Okay, you want to read those into the record?
Absolutely. The first one is from Shoshana Zeldner. The Together We See Sparks creative placemaking plan provides a strategic framework for Sparks' arts and culture future. The plan was developed and informed by constituencies throughout Sparks, ensuring that community voice and values are reflected in Sparks' arts and culture identity. I am so proud of Francine Burge and the Together We See Sparks Advisory Committee for helping this project come to fruition. With this plan, the city is poised to curate and commission a vibrant and long-term public art program in Victorian Square. Our next one is from Paul Fenkel from the City of Sparks. My name is Paul Fenkel. I am one of 2 artists selected under the Together We See Sparks RFP. I completed the Big Easel project that was a public art project focused on community engagement. The easels were deployed at 4 events during the summer of 2019, which collected over 700 public comments related to the City of Sparks. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the following who made this project possible: the City of Sparks, including the Parks and Recreation Department, the Together We See Sparks Committee, the National Endowment of the Arts, the Sierra Arts Foundation, Shelley Willis Consulting, Springboard for the Arts, Third Thursday Event and 39 North, the Lavender Festival, the Art Town Concert Series Downtown Sparks, members of the public who attended these events and took the time to participate. I am supportive of the policy recommendations that the Together We See Sparks creative placemaking plan for Victorian Square has put forward to establish how the City of Sparks will engage artists and designers in the future development of Sparks. Thank you for your consideration. Now, I do have 2 additional public comments, just so that everybody is aware. These 2 public comments we received via email. They are from 2 of the appellants for item 11.1. So we are going to read them under general public comment, since they will be allowed to still speak during the appeal process. Some of them are long, so I'm going to try really hard to get through them. The first one is from Michael Eastman. The Sparks Planning Commission met remotely on April 16th, 2020. The discussion at hand was of paramount importance. the proceeding of the Five Ridges development. This development is planned to contain 1,200 to 1,800 or more homes, principally in the lower areas, villages 1 through 7, but planned to grow to the ridge tops with villages 8 through 10. Though this was technically a legal meeting, the remote nature of it and the importance of it gave the appearance of a project being pushed through without the usual public input. Yes, public input was allowed via email, but many of us attempted to be on the call list, but were not able to get through with our input during the public comment timeframe. I do not believe my input would have had any bearing on the predetermined outcome, but I firmly believe the commission should have waited for a true public hearing on this matter of such significance. Thank you for hearing our appeals, but I again believe this issue is large enough to necessitate reviewing at an in-person council meeting. My primary input for the commission would have been, and is still, that the Sparks City Council owes to its constituents to do a complete ridge analysis. I attended Planning Commission and City Council meetings in 2018 concerning this same project, and there was only lip service paid to the significant ridgeline concept. The comment was made in passing that this ridgeline in question, Old Quarry, was not on the list of current proposed significant ridgelines. Of course, that was true since the Old Quarry ridgeline was not in the city limits when the ridgeline review was accomplished. You see why we feel like the commission and the council don't really want to listen to the very people that notify of the public meetings. This is one of the most compelling ridgelines in all of Sparks, particularly from the north. It is steep sloped with nothing but blue sky above it. I understand that current or past city council members have remarked that some homes were built on ridgelines in East Sparks that slipped under the radar and should not have been built. Now we're stuck with those eyesore ridges forever. Please do everything in your power to stop a development that will suck the life out of yet another beautiful ridge. I close with two principal requests. One, now that the Quarry Ridgeline is in the Sparks city limits, I feel you are obligated to conduct a thorough study of the ridge and its scenic importance. If our city is going to grow to the west and north, you should certainly take a look at the ridge's significance for the thousands who view it daily. Two, if you are tempted to fully approve the Planning Commission's recommendation for the approval of this project, I strongly suggest you wait to do so only at a full council meeting, allowing in-person comments. Only then can you truly feel the angst and frustration of the people of Spanish Springs. Respectfully, Michael Eastman.
Thank you.
I wet my whistle. All right. And the next one is from Nancy Danner. My name is Nancy Danner. My husband Howard and I have lived in the Spanish Springs area for over 25 years. Our front door directly faces the ridge that you are trying so desperately to build on. As stated in previous comments, that bridge is what we see each day from our front porch. Beyond that, the view of this ridge can be seen throughout this valley. This ridge offers the beauty of our Nevada desert. Placing houses on the ridges would be a blight on the Spanish Springs Valley. If I recall correctly, in January 1999, meeting with Granite Pit, it was stated, according to the Spanish Springs area plan, the ridgeline was protected and was not to be disturbed. I could be wrong on the exact date of that meeting. It has been a while. With that in mind, where does that leave us? The city has so blatantly ignored the conditions set forth to build on any ridge, let alone the area plan, but put in place for the Spanish Springs area. I do not believe they were diligent when mapping out and studying the impact of building on the crest of the ridge. Please understand we are not against development, but in all fairness, development should take into consideration the surrounding residents and the impact said development might have on the residents' lifestyle. It is building on the ridge crest that we find offensive. How does building on a ridge that faces Washoe County become less important than building on a ridge that might face the city of Sparks? The residents of Spanish Springs were assured this ridgeline was protected. Everybody wants and appreciates a view. We all want that. However, because we chose to live in the valley, is there any fairness that a developer has the right to take away our views? Once the skyline is gone, it cannot be replaced. While these comments have only addressed the ridgeline itself and the effect it will have on the residents, there are so many other issues that should be taken into consideration. Traffic on Pyramid cannot sustain additional cars. Has a plan been put into place to build access roads before the development? It is apparent the city of Sparks has no regard for the traffic issues the Spanish Spring Valley faces. We are asking that you take into consideration the longtime residents, homeowners of the valley, and deny any request to build along the crest of this ridge. While we have an appreciation for the open space and the ridge crest, it is apparent not everyone shares that appreciation. Unfortunately, we often get developers from neighboring states that give no value to the beauty of our valley. Thank you for your time, Nancy and Howard Dana.
Is that all of the public comment, Lisa?
That is all that has been called in, or that has been emailed in, Mr. Mayor, but it appears that I do now have 3 additional public comments.
Okay, would you go ahead?
Absolutely. The first one is going to be from telephone number 365-7009. Please state your name for the record and your time will begin once you do so.
Hi, my name is Mike Eastman. I know you just read my letter, but I didn't have any confidence that I would be able to get through this meeting either. I attempted to do so at the last planning council meeting and wasn't able to get through. I live at 10 Mack Street with the property that's adjacent to this subject quarry ridgeline development. I purchased and moved this property in 2015 with the firm belief that the ridgeline on my south border was quarry property with ridgeline safeguards. One of the principal draws to Sparks and Spanish Springs is the general containment of the development to the valley floors with only few regrettable ridges developed on each side. In 2018, I received an invitation to a community meeting at Spanish Springs Library for a presentation by a company wanting to develop the quarry off Highland Ranch Parkway that is just a short way to my southeast. I attended the meeting as I was very concerned about any development on the ridge. At that meeting, the developer's representative assured the 15 or 20 of us present, since they only invited contiguous property owners, that the development would be an enclave-type community nestled in the quarry itself and would not impact the ridgeline. I walked away reassured, but not trusting. At later planning commission and city council meetings, the developer's true purpose became evident, and I have resisted at every opportunity. I believe the city council has violated the trust placed in it by the people of Sparks. You have a duty to protect the ridge lines in and around the city, and even have accomplished a ridgeline survey, but that didn't include this ridge. You elected to annex this quarry property into the city, but have failed to protect the ridges as stipulated in prior agreements. Others have stipulated those specifics, so I'm not going to restate those. I request that you deny this developer's request to build on a ridgeline. If not that, then at least delay the decision until we have a face-to-face public meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa? You're muted, Lisa.
There we go. The next public comment is from Wayne Patterson. Wayne, please again state your name for the record and begin.
Wayne, are you there?
He's still muted.
It looks like he's not responding, so I'm going to move on. And I'll come back to him at the end. So the next public comment is from 775-626-0137. Please state your name for the record and begin speaking.
Hi, good morning. Well, good afternoon, guys. It's Sardina Perry, and all looking good out there on camera. Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I wanted to first thank you guys for making this Zoom meeting available. It's really a benefit for us to be able to participate during this lockdown. I wanted to touch briefly just on my thoughts, certainly not my knowledge, but living under a protected ridge line that didn't get protected, I did want to offer my pathetic little 2 cents. My thought is that the city of Sparks is very honorable, and I find the people calling in and insulting my city council to not know a whole lot about the city of Sparks. Now, that said, maybe when Tim redid Title 20, maybe the hillside ordinance did not get transferred. I don't know what that is. Whoops. This thing is bubbling. So, but I would think, and I feel pretty confident that if we still have an hillside ordinance in effect, the city of Sparks would, by virtue of being a responsible city, include any parcels that are annexed under that ordinance. So I guess my question would be, is can we check and make sure that the hillside ordinance didn't get changed when we rewrote Title 20? Thank you. And thank you for being here and hanging out through all this.
Thanks, Ardina.
Mr. Mayor,
Lisa?
the next public comment is from 775-772-2353. Please state your name and begin speaking.
Yes. My name is Kyle Zukoski. I live at 7285 Katrina Way. I had sent an email around 10 o'clock a.m. and you guys obviously aren't going to read it, so I'm going to pull it up and read it myself. One moment. Well, here we are again, discussing planning and ordinances that have already been approved and in place for decades. With that said, I have a simple question for you. Why are you disregarding past hearings and documentation as if they never existed? I suppose I should give you the benefit of the doubt that it's not entirely money-based, but with all due respect, I am definitely struggling with that considering what's before us today. And to compound our worries, a meeting is scheduled midday during a pandemic, while no one that is affected by this special permit approval is allowed to confront you personally. Unfair on so many different levels. The Master Plan 5 Ridges project is really not the issue at hand, though we all know the impact it will have on environmental, water tables, traffic, congestion, erosion, emergency response, privacy, noise pollution, commute frustrations, etc. It's really the section 20.04.011, slopes, hilltops, and ridges. Oh, and how quickly the Sparks has forgotten about a compliance sent in 1999 stating that if our valley were to be taken over by the city of Sparks, Washoe County, Reno, or if our sphere of influence would change, the compliance would be adopted along with it. Stated minutes on board meetings in 1999 as follows. As to expansion of the pit beyond the ridgeline, there's a general condition that says what you do shall be in accordance with what you submit. The mining plan submitted does show this as a maximum extent. Additionally, condition 14 says ridgelines shown as those to be protected on the department's suitability map of the Spanish Springs area plan shall not be disturbed in any way. And in the Spanish Springs area plan, most of the ridges around the site are identified as ridges that are visible from Pyramid Highway and the valley are not to be disturbed. As if almost 400 acres isn't enough to build on, now they want to litter the blue skyline ridgetops with high density housing. I ask you to revisit this decision and look deeper into the impact it will have on Spanish Springs and its residents. So I would also like to add that the last little powwow that we went to at the Spanish Springs Library, where the contractor developer was there, he promised us all, and I say all 14 of us, as we are witnesses, that he would not be building.
Yeah,
and that's about all I have
excuse
to
me.
put in.
Excuse-
Appreciate your help
Okay.
in revisiting this. Good day.
Thank you, Kyle. Lisa, is there anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there is. It looks like I have three more. Before I bring them in, I did want to reiterate to everybody that the two public comments that I just read regarding the appeal were from the appellants of the appeal. We did receive numerous public comments regarding the appeal that were received from people other than the appellants of the appeal, and those will be read into the record during the public comment period for that item. So if anybody is unsure or feels like their item or their email did not get received, I assure you those will be read in when item 11.1 is open. So our next public comment is from Cheryl Glotfelty. Cheryl, your line is open. You will need to unmute. Please state your name again for the record and your time will begin.
Thank you. My name is Cheryl Glodfelty. I live at 7535 Star Hill Way in Sparks. And I did send in one of those emails that you're going to read, so you don't need to read it, but I would rather use my own voice. So I'll just comment now. Thank you for hearing an appeal for planning case number PCN 190040. I emailed comments for the April 16 meeting, which are in the public record, and will now just briefly reiterate my main concern. I urge the council to require a ridge assessment on the 5 Ridges property prior to voting on proposed phase developments for that property. The very fact that the project is named 5 Ridges should alert you to the fact that there are significant ridges. Now that the property has been annexed to the city of Sparks, it should follow the planned development protocol of under ridge assessments and complying with ridge protection codes. There is in fact a significant ridge on the north edge of the 5 Ridges property. If houses are built along that ridge line, they would loom over where my husband and I and our neighbors live and would spoil our view of the ridge. By the way, they would also loom over the lower houses in the 5 Ridges development. In the Planning Commission meeting on April 16, 2020, I was dismayed that there was not more rigorous discussion of this proposal. With the exception of Commissioner Scott Carey, the Planning Commission members seemed apathetic. The proposal appeared to be a done deal, and public comment was not even acknowledged, let alone addressed, by the Commission. Your decision is an important one, and I urge you to engage attentively in the process. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Cheryl. Lisa?
The next public comment is, we're going to try and go back to Wayne Patterson. Wayne, you will need to unmute your line. You have been allowed to speak during this time.
He's on the line, he's just muted.
Yeah, and I have unmuted him, so he has himself muted also, Mr. Mayor. So it looks like that's going to be our last one for this public comment period. If people are providing comment regarding the appeal, there will be another public comment period open for that.
Okay, seeing there is no other further public comment, then we'll bring it back to the council. Number 5.1, approval of the agenda for possible action. And we have a couple moves. That's, you sent that to me, Lisa, is that correct?
That is correct.
So
Sir.
what we'd like to do is move 11.1 in front of 9.1 and 10.1 in front of 9.11. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so if there aren't any other requests, please put that in motion with the amendments anyway. Looking for a motion to accept the agenda or approve the agenda. Paul,
Move to approve the agenda, moving items 11.1 to be heard before item 9.1 and moving item 10.1 to be heard before item 9.11.
Okay, I have a motion, looking for a second.
I'll second it, Abbott.
Mr. Abbott is a second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll move on to the minutes. Consideration and possible approval of the minutes, excuse me, the Sparks City Council meeting for May 11th, 2020. Any changes? Seeing none, looking for a motion. Ms. Bybee?
I move to approve the minutes from the Sparks City Council meeting on May 11th, 2020 as submitted.
Okay, I have a motion, looking for a second.
Second.
Mr. Dare is a second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. We move on to announcements and presentations. 7.1. See if I can bring this up here. Lisa, do you want me to read this?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Pardon me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is a proclamation for the public works. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the city of Sparks. And whereas the infrastructure in these facilities and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government in the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential to our citizens. And whereas it is the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the city of Sparks to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2020 marks the 60th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, Canadian Public Works Association, Be It Now. Now, therefore, I, Ronald E. Smith, Mayor of the City of Sparks, Nevada, do hereby designate the week of May 17th through the 23rd, 2020 as National Public Works Week. I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to contribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. National Public Works Week.
And Mr. Mayor, we do have Adam Searcy and John Erickson on to accept that.
Okay, where are they at? Hey, Adam. Can you hear me, Adam?
Yes, hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much. I'm actually here today on behalf of the Northern Nevada branch of the American Public Works Association. Greatly appreciate this recognition and want to commend the City of Sparks for their ongoing commitment to public works, especially during this pandemic. Now more than ever, these employees deserve our recognition and continued support. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'm sorry we have to do it remotely like this, but do the best we can. John, Mr. Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, John Erickson, City Engineer. We've been working very tirelessly during the pandemic. You know, as many of you have heard, the Public Works Maintenance Group was hit right out of the chute with the pandemic, and so we've kind of battled through that, and we're out in the field daily working on projects, both on the public works maintenance side, as well as the construction of projects that were approved through the current fiscal year. So thank you very much. We really appreciate your support.
Thank you. I think we can give you a hand. Maybe you can hear that over that.
Yeah. Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to 7.2. A presentation of regional preparation in response to COVID-19 pandemic by the Washington County District Health Officer. Is this Kevin Dick?
Yes, good afternoon.
Hi, Kevin, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Smith and members of the Sparks City Council. I appreciate you having me on the agenda for this update. I do have some updated statistics for today that we're releasing. We do have an additional 54 new cases of COVID-19 that we're reporting, but I also want to clarify that the majority of these cases are from testing that were specimens collected back on May 14th. And we have an issue with the commercial lab that the incident management team had contracted with early on to give us sufficient test capacity, 5,000 tests through this lab. They were supposed to provide us with 72-hour turnaround time on their tests. and they've failed to do that. So at this point, we have stopped shipping the tests to that lab for testing. We're working to try to get reimbursement for those costs. So unfortunately, that was a well-intended effort to provide us with commercial lab capacity, but that lab has failed to perform very well for us. So these are the majority of these 54 cases are from samples that were collected back on May 14th. So I wanted to provide that clarification. I do, though, also want to emphasize that we still do have active cases in Washoe County, and the public should continue to take care and take appropriate actions to protect themselves. As we're reopening the economy, our success is going to depend on everyone taking responsibility for their part in trying to reduce the spread of this disease. We currently have 54 deaths in Washoe County from COVID-19. Each of those is a tragedy, of course, for the individual that's deceased, but for their family and friends, a huge impact that we've had in our community. And we need to recognize this is a serious disease. This is not like the flu. I looked at the flu deaths in Washoe County over the 16-17 flu season, the 2017-2018 flu season, and the 2018-2019 flu season. Over that entire season, each of those years from September through May, our average number of deaths from flu were 16 for the entire season. So since March, 54 people have passed away from COVID-19 in Washoe County. Is very serious. So I want to encourage everybody to continue as we're reopening to conduct all of those practices to help to help prevent the spread of the disease, and that includes the social distancing, the wearing cloth coverings when people are out. The total number of cases that we've had to date is 1,405. Of those, our active cases are 604. So this is the highest number of active cases that we've had to date. And this is our people that we have contact tracing staff through the health district, through the National Guard that are assisting us, through some volunteers that we have from other departments here in Washoe County that are working with us to do the interviews with these people to identify who they may have been in close contact with, have them appropriately isolated while they're recovering, and have those people all quarantined. So we have a small army that we've amassed working on this. The Guard we have available to us until June 24th presently. And we're working to put together longer term plans to how we maintain our testing and our contact tracing moving forward. The state has approximately $10 million available for the Washoe County Health District to support our testing and contact tracing efforts moving forward. And we're developing the work plans and the budgets to apply for that funding and get the staffing on board to continue our effort into the future. We have good hospital capacity remaining. We have 67% of our acute care hospital beds that were occupied as of yesterday, as reported by the Nevada Hospital Association. 48% of our ICU beds occupied, and only 12% of ventilators in use. So our healthcare system has good capacity. They are available, but we also recognize that we need to do this right to avoid a second surge coming in the future, and we're concerned about what the effects of fall and the flu season may be coming forward. So I had a discussion with Dr. Slonim at Renown last week. He continues to maintain the 700 bed build out that they constructed in their parking garage in case there is a need for that in the future. And I support him. I think that's a prudent reserve that we have available for our healthcare system. I wanted to talk a little bit about testing. So far in Washoe County, we've had 20,566 specimens collected in the county for testing that has been reported to the state. So that's about 4.3% of our Washoe County population that's been tested. We had the highest number of cases reported in a day is actually the same as we have today, but was back on the 17th, we had 54 cases. Those, as you'll recall, though, many of those were from the Arbor Memory Care facility. So we had an outbreak in a facility that impacted those numbers significantly. I mentioned the SDI test kits and the issues that we've had with those. Fortunately, the state lab has continued to perform for us to maintain testing capacity for the Washoe County Health District, and they are increasing their capacity with some additional equipment that they're bringing online that will further provide additional test capacity. With that occurring, and at the state's request for us to do community-based testing event for asymptomatic people in the community, next week, June 1st, from the 1st through the 6th, we will be opening up our post drive-through testing for people that are asymptomatic. And so they need to contact the health district either through our call center line, the 328-2427, or visit the website and use the portal to submit their information to be automatically scheduled for testing during that time period of the 1st through the 6th. The health district is also engaged with the School of Community Health Sciences and epidemiology researchers that they have at UNR on a seroprevalence study for the community. And that entails a testing of randomly selected households throughout the community to provide us with a representative sample using the antibody test that the state lab has validated in order to determine how many people in Washoe County have been exposed to COVID-19 and have developed the antibodies to the disease. So those letters have been sent out to almost 1,200 households. We're asking that they respond and register with us to participate in that study, and we're planning on doing the specimen collection for those tests the week of June 8th. And that will give us really the first scientifically based assessment of what the spread of COVID-19 is here in Washoe County. So there's a lot of effort that's going into the preparation, the planning and preparation for that study. The antibody testing that the state lab runs does require a blood draw. So it's a little bit more complicated and resource intensive to do the specimen collection for those samples. So there are a lot of moving parts, of course, going on with the regional response. We're continuing to operate under the unified command between Sparks, Reno, Washoe County, and the Health District. We did earlier this month transition our incident command from Sam Hicks to Aaron Kenniston, who's now the regional incident commander for the event. But that's my summary for the health district. But as I mentioned, there's lots going on with this, so I'd be happy to respond to any questions or comments, areas I didn't address.
Thanks, Kevin. Any questions or comments? Kevin, did I hear wrong, or was 30 of those deaths from the assisted living center?
I believe the last stat I saw was I think there were 30. I'm sorry, I'm confusing deaths with cases. 36 cases were from the Arbor facility. I believe there have been a number of deaths. I don't have the tally on those, but between our various facilities, and Arbor being a large one, and the Lakeside Health and Wellness, those have contributed the majority of the deaths.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the council?
I had a question.
Ms. Bybee?
So Kevin, on the antibody testing, if you do not get the 1,100 random and you're short on that, will you send out additional letters because you'd like to get that total number, or are you going to go with whatever your response is to that?
That's a great question, and thank you for that. We're still assessing what we're going to do. I think the latest I've seen is about 160 people have responded to date. The letters that we sent out were based on wanting to get about a 25% response rate to the letters. So we need somewhat less than 250 people to get registered for that test to give us the 95% confidence in the results for that. So we're keeping our fingers crossed and trying to push out more messaging on this to have people respond to those letters. We hope to be able to hit that number or assess with the researchers what confidence level we have. Do we need to try to get more people involved?
Okay, because I'm sure some of us would love to volunteer.
There are many people that would love to volunteer, and it's frustrating knowing that so many people want to get tested, and we're having trouble getting the people that we sent the invitation to respond. But we can't take the volunteers because then that blows the study being representative of the population.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Yeah, Mr. Lawson.
Hey, Kevin, how far away are we from testing for the antibodies?
So the state lab has the antibody test that they have one that Abbott manufactures. It's not to be confused with the rapid Abbott test, that ID Now, that's gotten a lot of coverage in the media and concerns about false negatives. The state lab did a validation study on this test and found it 100% sensitive and 99.6% specific. So it's very, very good and reliable test for us to use for the study. But the state lab is only using this antibody test in their work with the health authorities in the state to be able to do studies like we're doing to understand what we have had as exposure in our community or in subsections of the population. There are a lot of antibody tests that are available now. I think there's some 100 or so that have been developed by various commercial labs. And you may have seen in the news that there are concerns about how well they perform and whether their results are reliable. So I know that people are going to their healthcare providers, are paying to get the antibody tests. I guess I wouldn't really recommend that unless you know a lot about which test that lab is running and what you can make of that information. So we're using it not as a strategy for testing for just individuals in the population for COVID-19, but using it to try to get a population-based assessment of how much spread of COVID-19 we've had.
Yeah, for my wife and myself, we think we've already had this back in January, and we were just looking for some confirmation. But I don't want to go and get a test if it's not going to be accurate.
Yeah, and I don't know what supply the state lab will have moving forward for the antibody testing. But I guess first step might be to just, if you can find out from your healthcare provider with the test that they would have done for you, what test is being run in that lab, and then do some research on that test.
Okay. Any other further questions? Mr. Dare.
Hello, sir. Just real quick, with some of the possible announcements today and things coming up, how are we thinking of ramping up on some things? I mean, part of the concern is even with some of our businesses opening and things, from gloves to masks, they're not going to be able to find those necessarily. At least the gloves, it's going to get harder and harder for our restaurants to keep up with that. If you could just speak to our businesses out there and some of the people listening, how you see best as handling that, or what your thoughts on?
So obviously the PPE is a challenge as we're reopening, and our regional operations center is doing the logistics on this incident response and working with the state on getting PPE supplies. People can put a request in through the regional incident management team, the REOC, but then things are prioritized based on healthcare being a top priority for getting resources out. So I don't have an easy answer for how everybody's going to be able to get the PPE they need. It is something that we're working on regionally, and then there's the private sector that's become very competitive on private suppliers of PPE and where to get stuff.
So if one of our restaurants needed help, you said there's a place they could try to call. Who is that?
I can forward that information to you. I don't have it in front of me right now.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much for the update, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's support and your partnership in addressing this crisis.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll move on to consent items. There's only one, so if you want to pull one, let me know now. Otherwise, we're looking for a motion.
I'll move to approve consent item 8.1.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr.
Abbott.
Looking for a second.
I'll second that.
We have a second by Mr. Dare. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to go to general business. So we're going to jump all the way down to 11.1, planning and zoning. This is a public hearing. Public hearing, consideration of and possible action on appeals of the Planning Commission's approval of a conditional use permit to allow development of a site that is 10 acres in size or larger. And that's at the Five Bridges. And that's going to be Ian.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to share my screen and have a little presentation for you guys. All right. Okay, so Mayor Smith, members of the City Council, I'm Ian Crittenden, your Development Services Manager. This is an appeal of a conditional use permit for development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges in the Five Bridges project. The Planning Commission heard this item at their April 16th, 2020 meeting, where this item was approved unanimously. The City Clerk received 5 separate appeals to the Planning Commission's action. All of those appeals will be heard in this one item. The City Council has ultimate authority in all land use decisions, but has delegated the processing of conditional use permits to the Planning Commission. As such, the City Council is the appellate body for Planning Commission decisions regarding conditional use permits. Review of this appeal is de novo, which means that the City Council gets to make its own decision in this case and can consider all of the evidence anew. In review of this appeal, the City Council must use the substantial evidence standard. Substantial evidence is evidence that a reasonable person would rely on to support a conclusion and is not unsupported opinions. Staff has summarized the submitted appeals into these 3 categories. Some of the appellants expressed concerns regarding the Planning Commission's meeting being held remotely using Zoom. And some appellants indicated they were not able to participate in the Planning Commission meeting through Zoom, as was mentioned during public comment. In addition, one appellant expressed concerns about this appeal meeting being held remotely, and some of the appellants asserted that the ridges on this property are significant. Staff does not believe that the concerns that the Planning Commission meeting was held remotely are something that we can address. The state of Nevada's emergency directives have suspended the open meeting law's requirement that a public body provide a physical location where public may attend, but has not suspended the city's obligation to act on submitted requests in a timely manner. The suspension of the requirement for a physical location for meetings is contingent on our provision of an alternate means for public comment. The April 16th Planning Commission meeting was held virtually. Public comment was received by email, telephone, and during the meeting through Zoom. Staff read 14 emails into the record and summarized phone calls that had expressed opposition to the project. In addition, one member of the public did give public comment through Zoom. As was mentioned, some appellants indicated they were not able to participate in the Planning Commission's meeting through Zoom. Staff has determined that various factors, such as the quality of the user's internet connection, the user's cellular provider, and the type of device used may have impacted their ability to participate in meetings with Zoom, and these factors are outside of the control of the city. Also, as mentioned, one appellant expressed concerns about this meeting being held remotely. The provisions of the emergency directives have been extended until May 30th. Consequently, this meeting is also being held remotely as our available option. In addition, while none of the city's designated significant ridges are on this site, this conditional use permit process still provides for the review of development on or near ridgelines and hilltops. Planning Commission's approval of this request was subject to conditions of approval that intended to mitigate impacts of development on or near hilltops and ridgelines. I'm now going to go over the specifics of this CUP request. This site is located at 555 Highland Ranch Parkway. You can see the site here outlined in red and just west of Pyramid Way and north of Highland Ranch Parkway. The site was previously operated as an aggregate mine. In July of 2018, the city entered into a development agreement for the residential development of this site under its previous name of the quarry. In February of this year, the City Council approved an amendment to that development agreement under its new name of Five Ridges. There are two items that will be heard today pertaining to this site. Neither of them are approving a new project, but are the next steps in the process of implementing the development agreement. Review of this conditional use permit appeal and the tentative map serves the purpose of advancing the technical analysis of and defining conditions of approval for this first subdivision of land within the site. And as I said, this is an appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of the conditional use permit for development of sites that are subject to Sparks Municipal Code section 20.04.011, slopes, hilltops, and ridges. There are two criteria that determine if a conditional use permit for slopes, hilltops, and ridges is applicable. First, is the site larger than 10 acres? And second, does the site have slopes of 10% or greater over 25% or more of the site? This site is 386.87 acres, which meets that first criterion. However, the development agreement for this site established that the previously disturbed portions of the site will not be used in the calculation of maximum disturbed area. This preliminary slope analysis that you're looking at determined that 120.93 acres, this area that is white on the map, would be exempted for the purposes of calculating maximum disturbed area. If the exempted area is subtracted from the total area of the site, we're left with 265.94 acres, which still meets that first criterion of being bigger than 10 acres. The preliminary slope analysis also determined that over 29% of this site had a slope of 15% or higher, which means that the portion of the site with slopes over 10% is an even greater percentage than that. So the second criterion is also met. So having established why the slopes, hilltops, and ridges section of the code applies, we're not going to talk about the standards established for development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges. The first set of standards addresses design, and there are 4 design policies. Design policy 1 relates to the slope analysis we were just discussing. The applicant's slope analysis considered the slopes present on the site and calculates, according to guidelines contained in the code, the portion of the site that is developable. According to this analysis, and as is memorialized in the development agreement, the developable area is 145.61 acres plus 120.93 acres determined to be previously disturbed, for a total of 266.54 developable acres. This conditional use permit proposes to disturb 138.13 acres. That's 128.38 acres less than the maximum area permitted to be disturbed. It's also important to note that this request is associated with the first tentative map for the Five Ridges project. The slope analysis and the conditional use work permit will have to be updated with each ensuing tentative map application to reflect the total disturbed area and document continued compliance with the Sparks Municipal Code and the development agreement. The second policy addresses degradation of the site as well as erosion and sedimentation. The site was highly degraded by its prior use as an aggregate mine. The applicant's plan is actually attempting to mitigate much of this existing degradation through extensive slope stabilization, landscaping, and revegetation. The third policy aims to limit long slopes with sharp transitions. As I just mentioned, the plan provided for the site aims to reclaim the existing long slopes with sharp transitions using slope stabilization benches. The fourth policy addresses how building on the site will be designed to show sensitivity to hilltops and ridgelines. Building houses along the ridgeline, as is proposed in Village 2 and 3, is not inherently sensitive to the visual impact of the development on these ridges. However, development along ridgelines is sensitive to the terrain, as this type of development requires far less grading than development on the slope of the hill would. Condition 6 requires that plans submitted for building permits demonstrate that homes or buildings to be constructed on or near the ridgelines show a high degree of sensitivity to their terrain by using earth tone colors and site-sensitive design. Significant ridges are designated in the slopes, hilltops, and ridges section of the code. These specific ridges were adopted as the only ridges in the city that require the application of additional setbacks. Since the ridges on the site were not designated as significant, staff proposed condition 6 to address the requirement that buildings on or near hilltops and ridgelines be sensitive to the terrain and its visual impairment or impact. The next set of standards governs the slope analysis itself. On this slide, you can see the guidelines for determining the slope area that can be disturbed. This does not limit the area that can be disturbed in any single category, but determines the total area that can be disturbed on the site. But we can also see that in areas that have a slope of 30% or more that are going to be disturbed, they will have to be replaced at a 2-to-1 ratio with areas that will not be disturbed. This slide shows the table submitted by the applicant indicating their volume of proposed disturbance. As you can see, the applicant is proposing to exceed the maximum disturbed area in some of the categories. However, as we just discussed, the categories are not as important as the total area. And this table does show that the total area to be disturbed is less than the total disturbed area allowed. The applicant is proposing to disturb 25.61 acres that are in that 30% plus slope area. This will require the applicant to reserve 2-to-1 ratio. It's undisturbed, which means they will have to show 51.22 acres as undisturbed open space. The agreement also requires that 100 acres total be reserved as open space within the 5 ridges. This reservation of 51.22 acres will be applied towards that requirement. And this slide covers the last 4 standards addressed in the code. Engineering staff has reviewed the submitted plans addressing erosion and sedimentation and determined that they comply with code. In regard to landscaping, areas disturbed as part of the grading of the site must be revegetated to comply with the Sparks Municipal Code. The submitted plans indicate that this is the intent of the applicant, and condition 4 requires that these standards would be met. Areas required to be set aside as open space by the slopes, hilltops, and ridges section of the code are required to be maintained as undisturbed. The applicant must submit with their grading plans sheets demonstrating that the appropriate amount of open space within the 5 ridges development is protected and undisturbed. The city has designated, as we mentioned earlier, certain hilltops and ridges as significant. These hilltops and ridge lines require additional setback and protection. However, this site does not contain any of these designated hilltops and ridge Finally, we get into the findings for conditional use permit. Conditional use permits have 5 findings. I've grouped them together on these slides to kind of move through them a little more in a little more concise and organized way. Findings C1 and C2 address conformance and consistency. This site has a comprehensive plan, land use designation of intermediate density residential. The Five Ridges development is envisioned as a desirable, highly amenitized residential community in conformance with goal CC1, goal H2, and policy H1. And sidewalks will be provided throughout the development, and the development agreement details how city services will be provided to the site at acceptable levels in compliance with policies C4 and CF1. The site borders predominantly GR or general rural zone properties in the unincorporated county to the north, south, and west. To the east, the site is bordered by the Kylie Ranch North Plan Development. This conditional use permit request is for the development of slopes, hilltops, and ridges. Development on this portion of the site for residential use is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. The proposed conditions of approval are intended to mitigate any compatibility issues of development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges with the surrounding land uses by minimizing the visual impact to adjacent properties. Findings C3 and C4 look to address identified impacts. The potential impairment of natural resources is more appropriately addressed in the analysis for the tentative map application submitted for this site. However, it is important to note that much of the site was previously disturbed during its life as an aggregate mining operation. Impacts identified by staff relate to ridgeline development. Villages 2 and 3, located on the south portion of the site near Highland Ranch Parkway in the associated proposed tentative map, show houses along the ridgelines. Section 20.04.011 of the Sparks Municipal Code requires a high degree of sensitivity to the terrain and its visual impact when houses are placed along ridgelines. This is accomplished primarily via grading of the site. Condition 6 will require additional architectural considerations to address this requirement as well. Homes and architectural features that result in stark contrast to their surroundings will be prohibited, and Condition 6 reinforces this requirement. Additionally, areas of cut slope must be recontoured and revegetated to result in a natural appearance to ensure such areas are not visually obtrusive. Condition 3 reinforces this requirement. In conformance with state law and the Sparks Municipal Code, public notice for the Planning Commission was published in the Reno Gazette Journal on April 3rd. In addition, 45 notices were mailed to owners of property within 1,500 feet of the site on April 2nd. Those were the Planning Commission notices. Public notice for this appeal met those same standards and was published in the Reno Gazette Journal on May 13th, and notices were mailed on May 12th. The Planning Commission and City Council meetings function as the required public hearings for this appeal. As the City Council, you have options. You may uphold the Planning Commission's decision and affirm this item. You can reverse the Planning Commission's decision and deny this item. You can modify this item by approving it with conditions that are new or different than those that the Planning Commission approved for this item, or you can remand this item back to the Planning Commission to have them reconsider it. However, staff does believe that the findings can be made and is recommending approval or affirmation of this item. That ends my presentation. I am available for any questions, and the applicant's representative is also available for questions.
Okay, full screen, Lisa. Okay, are there any questions or comments?
Yes, I have a couple.
Mr. Lawson.
Ian, has this gone to regional planning already?
It went to regional planning as part of the annexation, comprehensive plan, rezoning, and development agreement process that initially established the Five Ridges under its previous name of the quarry back in 2018. It went through the process to go to regional planning.
Does it still have to go back to regional planning?
Not for this particular piece that's being requested here. The conditional use permit and tentative map would not require them to go back to regional planning at this time.
Thank you. Is there a special use permit or a conditional use permit on this property right now?
No, from the city of Sparks, no.
But I mean, is there one that's current that we would have to adhere to a special use permit or a conditional use permit?
No.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Ms. Bybee?
You're muted.
You're muted, Charlene.
Sorry, okay. Thank you. Ian, I have a couple of questions on the significant ridgeline, according to Sparks Municipal Code. The appellants are stating that because it was county and then we annexed it, did the annexation, that the significant ridge lines were established when this was still county property and not city. But yet in your update, you mentioned with the code update in 2015, when we did our code updates, significant ridge lines were included. And my question would be, were there significant ridge lines considered on this property when we did the code update and when we annexed?
So Jim Rundle may be a better person to answer some of this because he was so instrumental in the adoption of, or the update to this section of the code. And so he may correct me if I'm stepping out here, but I don't know that there weren't great amendments to the slopes, hilltops, and ridges section of the code when it was adopted in 2015, but the map was adopted at that time. And that is what I was trying to communicate is we did adopt the map at that time. I don't know to what level additional hillsides were considered at that time, but the map detailing the ones determined to be significant was adopted into the zoning code at the 2015 update.
Okay, so I guess my question is, if they were county when we did this original significant ridgeline mapping, was this particular property not considered because it was county, it was not city? Or did it become under consideration when we annexed into the city?
I'd turn that question over to Mr. Rundle if he's available.
Jim, are you on?
I'm on, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I can, maybe an appropriate way to answer that question would be a little bit of background, maybe a minute response. Would that be too long, Mr. Mayor?
No, go right ahead.
Well, as Councilwoman Bybee asserted, some of the neighbors are correctly asserting that the aggregate conditional use permit had conditions limiting the development on a ridgeline. And as Councilman Lawson just identified, that conditional use permit is no longer applicable at that site. It's expired. There is no applicable conditional use permit. But going back to Councilwoman Bybee's question, those ridge lines that, in my opinion, that the citizens are identifying were outlined in the Spanish Springs area plan. The Spanish Springs area plan was a master planning component in Washoe County's ordinance, not in the city of Sparks, Washoe County's. And that's before the city of Sparks had asserted the sphere of influence in that area and asserted planning jurisdiction. When the city ultimately did that in about 2008, we went through a cooperative planning process with Washoe County where we held 10 meetings. 3 of those were noticed to all the property owners within that area. And we developed what we called the West Pyramid Plan. And that plan took in everything that the citizens could throw at staff, the Planning Commission, the council, the Board of County Commissioners, and the Washoe County Planning Commission. And most of those components were in regard to traffic and what land usage should be on that land. And the land went essentially from Wedekind north to Eagle Canyon on the west side of Pyramid. Ultimately, there was no significant ridgeline that was identified in that West Pyramid Plan that got approved by the Sparks City Council and ultimately Regional Planning Commission. And so there was no need to, since there was no significant ridgeline identified in that master planning component that was approved in 2008, when the new zoning code was approved in 2015, I would not have proposed to the city council to carry over a significant ridge line because through our master planning process, we had not identified a need for one through that citizen involved process and all of those different elected and appointed persons process. So once the granite aggregate use ceased up there, that conditional use permit went away, and the city, having planning jurisdiction, annexed the property that was already master planned, and it did not need to have, it did not identify that significant ridge line because the master planning process did not identify it. And that's, I think that answers Councilwoman Bybee's question.
Councilman Bybee?
Yes, it does, Jim. Thank you. That clarifies it and gives us a little bit more information here too. The other question I had, Ian, I just had a quick second question. Do we know how many homes are in the plan, being planned for the Ridgeline in Village 2 and 3?
For the Ridgeline at 2 and 3, I don't know that number off the top of my head. We could certainly count them if that was something you were interested in doing. But at this time, I don't know the number of lots that are right along the Ridgeline there.
Okay, I was just trying to get an idea, relative to the rest, the size of the full development, but I don't need that exact number. Thank you. That's all.
Mr. Dare.
So we did receive a letter right before city council earlier from somebody, and reading through that, I think you guys all staff got that as well, didn't you? It was had yellow highlighted on it and stuff, and there's a portion, I believe, on page 46, and it seems from what I understand and what I see that even in reading this, and it pretty much talks about the ridge lines and things, that was particular to the quarry and particular to what was happening during that time. I want to make sure we speak to it. I almost feel like no matter what we do, it sometimes feels that people think we don't listen, but we are, and we're trying to make the best decisions we can within policy and how we move forward. And we have quite a bit of policy surrounded by this, from regional governance to our own. But when I read through that, it talks about the ridge lines. So would we say that particular thing that we just read expired because it was part of something back then? I just want to make sure it's clear when we're looking at some form of evidence that we're not just, no one can say we just set it aside and we didn't look at it. Can you speak to that or somebody?
Sure, and I can speak to it a little, and maybe, again, I think Jim touched on it a little bit, and I don't know if legal would be someone that would want to chime in here as well, but typically in the city of Sparks and in generally in other jurisdictions, though I can't speak to that as an absolute, conditional use permits have a lifespan. They run with the land as long as the operation of the use continues there. And then at some point after the end of that use, there's an expiration of that conditional use permit. And so, as this conditional use in the county has kind of run its course, it has expired, and then we wouldn't expect the conditions of approval for the use of an aggregate mine to apply to the use of a site for residential housing, regardless of them being on the same site. But I would like to turn that over to Jim if he has additional comment.
Jim?
Oh, Mr. Mayor, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilman Dare. Councilman Dare, as Ian said, so very specifically, that conditional use permit condition that you're citing, I think it was condition 14, cited the Spanish Springs area plan and the ridge lines identified in the Spanish Springs area plan. When City of Sparks master planned this area and asserted its planning jurisdictions, it replaced the Spanish Springs area plan as a county document for the City of Sparks document, which was identified as the West Pyramid Plan. So even when that conditional use permit was still active and operating as the granite aggregate operation, that condition was to an extent voided because the Spanish Springs area plan would not have applied to that area anymore. As that conditional use permit expired and we went through that whole planning process, we did not identify through that process significant ridge lines. So that condition was applicable back in the 90s and early 2000s, but in 2020 is no longer applicable.
So to be clear, if the CUP hadn't expired, we wouldn't be here right now talking about this. You wouldn't approve this project.
Mr. Mayor, if that conditional use permit had not expired, that would mean the aggregate use was still continuing, and Granite would have not sold the property to the current property owner.
Right. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the council? Okay, seeing none, this is a public hearing item. So Lisa, I'll open up the public hearing. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak?
And Mr. Mayor, did you want, I believe we have at least one of the appellants on. Did you want to hear from them before we open for public comment?
If they're available and want to say something, absolutely. Okay. And you're hard to hear, Lisa.
I'm trying to scoot forward here. Sorry, sir. So if the appellants for the appeal were Dan and/or Mindy Flanagan, Rock Cole, Michael Eastman, Nancy and/or Howard Danner, and Melinda Stillwell. So if any of those appellants are on and would like to speak or reply to the appeal, you can raise your hand or press *9 from your phone. We will also open for public comment, so you can submit for public comment by pressing *9. And would you like me? I have 10 emailed in public comments regarding this item, sir. Did you want me to read those in before we accept phone in public comment?
No, do the phone in public comment so we don't run into the same problem we had earlier where I think it was Mike Eastman actually had 6 minutes of public comment.
Gotcha.
Go ahead.
Okay, so it looks like then the first public comment is going to be from uh, 707-365-7009. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Mike Eastman. I appreciate the previous 6 minutes. Are you going to give me 3 more?
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate all that the council members and the mayor have spoken on. You guys have some very smart people in your planning division, and they've come up with a lot of good answers. The one thing that I would like to bring up in addition to the previous words are that everything you see there concerning villages, I believe is 2 and 3, all those numbers that they applied, they kind of make sense. And I don't know that any of us that have called in are directly objecting to those specific ridge lines. In general, we object to ridgeline development, but those specific ridgelines are very narrow and not overly damaging. The next phase of the project is what they're kind of keeping secret from you, and that is another something like 1,400 houses that they're trying to build on the entire length of the east-west ridge, going all the way from Sun Valley all the way out to the tip of the ridge, almost touching Pyramid. Now that area, if they'll show you an additional map, has that additional 1,400 houses. In the past, you council members have said, and the developer has said, that the whole thing doesn't make sense unless we get the entire 1,800 house development. If we only build villages 2 and 3, we don't get the efficiencies with the placement of utilities, roads, etc., and they wouldn't build it. So they're trying to get this in under your noses and saying, we'll approve this part, because once this is approved, we'll go get the other part and convince you that we have to in order to justify the expense. Please consider all that very, very carefully and look at the whole project, not this tiny piece I'm presenting you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, Lisa.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, and the next public comment is going to be from 775-742-4479. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, it's Rock Cole again. I'm happy to get 3 more minutes since I didn't get 3 in the last meeting. I listened to everything. I guess it kind of comes down to ethics and to what's right. We were promised something in Washoe County. Why wouldn't you have to take that same consideration in? If this ridge line faced the city of Sparks, it would never be built on. When you look around your city, and there are some homes on ridge lines, including Liberty Ridge, which I know was a debacle, they're all backed up by hills to dull their view. This thing has nothing behind it but blue sky. How do earth tones and roof lines, how are they sensitive to blue sky? Are you going to make them paint them blue? It's ridiculous. This is a significant ridgeline with some very important rock outcroppings. You need to study this, please. I beg you, just at least have staff look at this for a possible code amendment, like Scott Carey said. I understand what Blake Smith is trying to do. He called me today. He's a nice guy, and I don't begrudge him for this. And I'm in the business. I agree with development. I know we need homes for our families and friends, but putting them in the wrong place is a bad idea. Please don't let this happen. I mean, you're turning our valley into California. There's hundreds of homes up here. I heard earlier about the development that Ian Critton, and by the way, I'd like to hear how many emails Ian Critton got before the Planning Commission, because we never heard about that, about developable land. And there is some land that is developable that isn't being used. They want view lots, and I understand that. View lots sell. What about our view? If you guys put yourself in our position, what we were promised and what we deserve as promises, when this thing was annexed, it should have been studied, and that conditional use permit should have been honored. We were promised something. We were promised something in the quarry development agreement that said it was an enclave type development, and ridgelines were not to be impacted. That was a flat out lie. Just like the meeting at the library was a flat out lie that they told people so that we didn't bombard the meeting with people. I don't begrudge them for trying, but it's up to you guys to do the right thing. Please at least submit this to staff for a code amendment. Like Scott Carey said, it is a significant ridge in anybody's book. Please, I beg you, take a look at this. Thank you.
Thanks, Rod. Lisa?
It looks like the next public comment, Mr. Mayor, is from 775-376-0392. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Dan Flanagan. I spoke with the council members, and we had at the public hearing section at the beginning of the meeting, I just wanted to reiterate on a couple of items. Obviously, the ridgeline issue has been discussed in great depth, but I've been in this area for 40 years, and we were never contacted when they redid the area plan, and I'm very involved with Washoe County and the planning, and have been for many, many years. And that was, we were not noticed on that, for number one. Number two is the traffic has not even been addressed. The traffic study that came with the applicant, it had to do with a level criteria of either 650 homes need to be built, or a maximum peak level of a level E or F level, where it's at an E and F level right now. And if you go on that road, you will find that out. And that needs to be a serious consideration of how they're going to have two egresses required by the fire department to even get in and out of there. That's going to severely impact Highland Ranch Parkway. That needs to be addressed and is a major issue. The other issue that came up along our research was that a lot of these subdivisions are requirements that get passed, and it seems to be the city of Sparks on some tax issues that you need to create these type of developments that create the tax basis. Is there something as citizens we can do to get involved in amending some of those tax issues so City of Sparks can take a look at these subdivisions with a little bit more, let's say, objectivity and for the citizens' concerns, rather than use them as an income basis that unfortunately is the tax setup right now. And thank you very much. I appreciate your time, council and staff.
Thanks, Dan. Lisa, is our clock not working?
Mr. Mayor, the three that just spoke were the appellants, so they did not have a 3-minute limit.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I will remind everybody, *9 on your phone or press the button to raise your hand for public comment during this item. And I have 10 separate emails, Mr. Mayor. 2 of them, I believe, were already read during the initial public comment period by the author themselves, but given the nature of this item, I'm going to read them again because we did receive them. The first public comment is from Leonard Danner. It was actually a phone call public comment, and he just wanted to put on the record that he is against the development if it breaks the ridge line, and his address is 7500 Marine Way. Okay, our next public comment is from David and Alicia Dick. Can you please mark my husband and I down as we are against the project? Our street is already busy with speeding cars in the neighborhood. The schools are already crowded with kids, and Spanish Springs is starting to build on top of each other. We bought out here for the land and space. We don't need another Reno. And the next public comment is from Fred Fagan, it looks like. I haven't had much time to review and gather all of my concerns and questions. I would appeal this as it is essentially in my backyard. I know currently the roadways are not quite sufficient to withstand the current population and cannot support our growing community. First off, I would have to say, if you were to grow this community, grow out, not in. Go further out pyramid with development, not in people's backyards. If there is more time to have, give the proper info to the people and community, that would be different. This is the first I've heard of this. Many neighbors are even unaware, at least give an extension and proper notification beforehand. All the neighbors I spoke to within the last 10 minutes about this are furious. We need more time to review and or appeal. I say no. The next public comment is from Jeff and Carmelita Haltom. We live on Dolores Drive, 89436. We already have to endure speeding traffic coming west from Pyramid Highway, not to mention the traffic on Pyramid Highway these days. We had a major fire at the top of Dolores Drive last year that we all on this street were blessed to have had no damages. We are scared and concerned about 1,800 more homes up here and the lack of fire department resources for our whole area. Allowing the building of 1,800 more homes to our area is ridiculous. Why did we only get information on this case 4 days before the so-called public meeting via Zoom on April 16th? Please reconsider and hold another meeting so that all interested and about to be impacted by this may voice their concern. The next public comment is from PJ Elsner. I am dismayed that the Ridgeline project has been approved. First, I was surprised that this area was under the jurisdiction of Sparks, as I thought it was closer to Sun Valley. How does this work out? Second, and more important to us, we in Spanish Springs are already subjected to one-way in and one-way out Pyramid Highway, and cannot imagine an increase in traffic that would be coming from Highland Ranch to enter Pyramid. Third, such an addition of homes would be between Sun Valley and West Spanish Springs and could affect the homes built up in the hills off Dolores. We urge serious reconsideration of this project. The next public comment is from Ron and Michelle Scholl. Dear Sparks City Council, we would like to voice a strong opposition to the development of the ridge line above our home and that of our neighbors. Since we purchased our property and built our home almost 27 years ago, we have been advised that building on the ridge line was not possible. but I guess the old saying of never say never is ringing true. We build in a rural area because it is a rural area, not because we wanted hundreds of people looking over our homes. It is the quality of life that we sought and have enjoyed since moving out of our congested Sparks neighborhood long ago. We know progress and development is inevitable, but there seems to be no regard for the impact projects like this have on citizens that have spent their hard-earned money to purchase and maintain the way of life that has been assured them. We all out here have been told that the ridgeline is protected. Why is it no longer considered protected? What has changed? Simply moving zoning from Washoe County to the city of Sparks should not change that designation. Why does the developer need to build all the way up to the ridgeline? Please consider the opinions of those of us that are directly impacted by this project. Please reject this project or consider limiting it so that the ridgeline remains protected. The next public comment is from Wayne Patterson. Dear Sparks City Council, my name is Wayne Patterson and I have lived at 7325 Patrina Way since 1997. I am absolutely opposed to the destruction of the protected ridges as proposed in case number PCN 19-0040. I understand we live in a high growth area and I understand that means change. I also understand that this project has been approved by the same entity that brought Swan Lake to the doorsteps of Lemon Valley residents. Good luck, Kylie Ranch residents. I have pored over the documents supporting this project, but as the documents supporting the creation of Swan Lake, I surmise the word mitigate figures prominently in addressing the concerns of long-term local residents like myself. A quick look up in Microsoft Word defines mitigate as make less severe, serious, or painful, followed by the example, he wanted to mitigate misery in the world. I have no grand illusions about derailing this entire project, much less mitigating world misery. But preserving the decades-long protected ridge lines will certainly make this project less severe, serious, and painful for myself, my neighbors, and the residents of Spanish Springs. Much of the quality of life we derive from living here is our love of the ridgeline views, unsullied by the sea of asphalt shingles and sunset-destroying streetlights. We escape the din of city life and the invasion of prying eyes to live in quiet serenity. I don't know, but I am confident when the ridgeline protections were put in place, the authors of the protections understood these now threatened attributes to be a large part of the appeal of making a home in Spanish Springs Valley. This project as proposed could forever remove those attributes and destroy the serenity. So what has changed? The cynic in me could cast all manner of aspiration as to the motivations of approving this project, but I would simply ask how much is enough? I can tell you I don't give a whit about anyone's business model falling apart because they are prohibited from turning under every blade of grass and grinding to death every species between Highland Parkway and the back door of my neighbors' homes. Is it enough to build a few less homes and preserve the quality of life we've known for decades and until now could expect to be preserved for those who succeed us? Or is it enough when our protected ridgelines are covered in asphalt roads and asphalt shingles and the buffers between the communities, like good neighbor fences, are destroyed? I stand in opposition to the destruction of the protected ridgelines in the Spanish Springs Valley. Wayne Peterson. All right, so the next one is from Cheryl Glotfelty. Thank you for hearing an appeal for planning case number PCN 19-0040. I emailed comments for the April 16th meeting, which are in public record, and will now just briefly reiterate my main concern. I urge the council to require a ridge assessment on the 5 Ridges property prior to voting on proposed phase developments for that property. The very fact that the project is named 5 Ridges should alert you to the fact that there are significant ridges. Now that the property has been annexed to the city of Sparks, it should follow the planned development protocol of undergoing ridge assessments and complying with ridge protection codes. There is, in fact, a significant ridge on the north edge of the 5 Ridges property. If houses are built along the ridge line, they would loom over where my husband and I and our neighbors live and would spoil our view of the ridge. They would also loom over the lower houses in the 5 Ridges development. In the city council meeting on April 16th, 2020, I was dismayed that there was not more rigorous discussion of the PCN 19-0040 proposal. With the exception of Councilmember Scott Carey, council members seemed apathetic. The proposal appeared to be a done deal, and public comment was not even acknowledged, let alone addressed by council members. Your decision is an important one. Please wake up and engage in the process. Thank you, Cheryl Glotfelty. Two left. The next one is from Kyle Zukowski, City of Sparks Planning Commission. Well, here we are again discussing planning and ordinances that have already been approved and in place for decades. With that said, I have a simple question for all of you. Why are you disregarding past hearings and documentation as if they never existed? I suppose I should give you the benefit of the doubt that it's not entirely money-based. But with all due respect, I am struggling with that considering what's before us today. And to compound our worries, a meeting is scheduled midday during a pandemic while no one that is affected by this special permit approval is allowed to confront you personally. Unfair of so many levels. The master plan of Five Ridges project is really not the issue at hand, though we all know the impact it will have on the environment, water tables, traffic congestion, erosion, emergency response, privacy, noise pollution, commute frustrations, etc. It's really the section 20.04.011, slopes, hilltops, and ridges. Oh, and how quickly the city of Sparks has forgotten about a compliance set in 1999 stating that if our valley were to be taken over by the city of Sparks, Washoe County, Reno, or if our sphere of influence would change, the compliance would be adopted along with it. Stated minutes of board meeting of 1999 as follows. As to expansion of the pit beyond the ridge lines, there's a general condition that says what you do shall be in accordance with what you submit. The mining plan submitted does show this as a maximum extent. Additionally, condition 14 says ridge lines shown are as those to be protected on the department suitability map of the Spanish Springs area shall not be disturbed in any way. And in the Spanish Springs area plan, most of the ridges and the site are identified as ridges that are visible from Pyramid Highway and the valley and are not to be disturbed. As if almost 400 acres isn't enough to build on, now they want to litter the blue skyline ridge tops with high density housing. I ask you to revisit this decision and look deeper into the impact it will have on Spanish Springs and its residents. And the last one is from Jason Eastman, I'm sorry, sir. The Sparks Planning Commission met remotely on April 16th, 2020. The discussion at hand was of paramount importance, the proceedings of the Five Ridges development. This development is planned to contain 1,200 to 1,800 or more homes, principally in the lower areas, villages 1 through 7, but planned to grow to the ridge tops with villages 8 through 10. Though this was technically a legal meeting, the remote nature of it and the importance of it gave the appearance of a project being pushed through without the usual public input. Yes, public input was allowed via email, but many of us attempted to be on the call, but were not able to get through and our input during the meeting. I firmly believe the commission should have waited for a true public hearing on this matter of such importance. The Sparks City Council owes it to its constituents to do a complete ridge analysis. I attended Planning Commission and City Council meetings in 2018 concerning this same project, and there was only lip service paid to the significant ridgeline concept. The comment was made in passing that this ridgeline in question, Old Quarry, was not on the list of proposed significant ridgelines. Of course, that was true since the Old Quarry ridgeline was not in the city limits when the ridgeline review was accomplished. You see why we feel that the commission and the council don't really want to listen to the very people they notify of the public meetings. This is one of the most compelling ridgelines in all of Sparks, particularly from the north. It is steep sloped with nothing but blue sky above. I understand that the current and or past city council members have remarked that some homes were built on ridgelines in East Sparks that slipped under the radar and should not have been built. Now we're stuck with those eyesore ridges forever. Please do everything in your power to stop a development that will suck the life out of yet another beautiful ridge. I close with two principal requests. Now that the quarry ridge line is in the Sparks city limits, I feel you are obligated to conduct a thorough study of the ridge and its scenic importance. If our city is going to grow to the west and north, you should certainly take a look at this ridge's significance for the thousands who view it daily. 2, if you are tempted to fully approve the Planning Commission's recommendation for the approval of this project, I strongly request you wait to do so only at a full council meeting, allowing in-person comments. Only then can you truly feel the angst and frustration of the people of Spanish Springs. Respectfully, Jason Eastman. Whew, that is the last one.
You tired?
I am. And it appears, as of right now, Mr. Mayor, we do not have any other requests for public comment.
Okay, seeing no further public comment, we'll bring it back to the council for action. Questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question. And Ian, if you could just help me understand. So we did receive, or the Planning Commission received written concerns, but they did not, most of the appellants were unable to call in and talk in person. Was that the situation?
Yes, we received a number of emails and phone calls. We read 14 emails into the record at that meeting and summarized the phone calls, essentially all being in opposition to development along the ridge lines. But yes, there were people who said they had trouble being able to provide public comment during the meeting. You know, as I mentioned during my presentation, you know, the technical difficulties that may have come along with that are stuff that was outside of our control. We tried to allow for public comment. We did have one successful public comment. We didn't realize we'd had people trying to comment that were unable to do so. And so, you know, there was nothing we could do from that point to allow public comment any more than we attempted to do.
All right, thank you. And yeah, I guess that's my concern, is that I don't know if it would have swayed the Planning Commission at all, based on, you know, hearing people in person versus in writing, but that to me is a concern.
And Paul, that's why we read that comment at the beginning of the meeting, where if they have technical problems or difficulties, that there's nothing we can do about that.
I understand we're working under different times right at the moment.
We are. Okay, any other questions or comments? Ms. Bybee. You're muted. Charlene, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I keep turning it off so I'm not creating background noise. Ian, can you clarify for me on what we're looking at right now, the approval today on the ridge line? Is this just looking at the ridge line for villages 2 and 3, or at ridge lines for the entire project, which would include villages 8, 9, and 10?
Councilwoman Bybee, that's a great question. So I think that sometimes the title of the section of code that is applicable can kind of be misinforming, right? This section of the code is titled Slopes, Hilltops, and Ridges, has general applicability to any site that has a slope of 10% or greater over 25% or more of the site, whether there's construction on ridge lines or not, right? In this case, we do have, with this specific conditional use permit and the associated tentative map, we do have 2 ridge lines that are being shown having some construction at or near the top of those ridge lines, and that is villages 2 and 3. So those are the only 2 areas of ridgeline that are being addressed currently with this conditional use permit and the associated tentative map that will be the next item on the agenda.
Okay, that helps greatly in clarifying. That's all we're looking at today. We're not looking at traffic. We're not looking at the upper ridge lines. That comes further down the road in other approvals as we look at tentative maps for the future villages, correct?
Correct. There will be some discussion of traffic with the tentative map consideration for this piece. But yes, that'll be discussed in more detail in the presentation associated with the tentative map.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate the clarification.
Okay, questions or comments? Mr. Dare?
Yeah, so I know this is a hard conversation for especially those who live right there. I don't see a way we don't move forward with what's in place in its policy, but I would also say I would encourage people to really work with the developer. I can tell you what we know of this developer. He's not running away or going anywhere. He's a part of our community and cares. I'm not sticking up for him. I'm just sitting with policy. But I would tell you that if this would be your best right now policy and what we see here, I'm going to make a motion if you'd like me to, and I'm see what everyone else thinks, but I'll make a motion to move forward where we're at now. But I do encourage that as a community, we do work together. There's a lot of different moving parts to this. And yeah.
Christopher, there's a motion, there's a recommended motion, if you'd read the whole thing.
Happy to. Okay, says I move to affirm the Sparks Planning Commission's decision to approve the conditional use permit CU 20005 to allow development of a site that is 10 acres in size or larger, with slope gradients of 10% or greater, 25% or more of the site, which is 38.6.87 acres in size, and is located at 555 Highland Ranch Parkway, Sparks, Nevada, in the SF-6 residential single-family zoning district, adopting findings C1 through C5 and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report, subject to the 7 conditions of approval as listed in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion looking for a second.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a second from Mr. Lawson. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Just a point of clarity, Ian, when was officially this project started? When did we see it at the city of Sparks for the first time?
I don't know when the first time you saw it was. Armando Ornelas was highly involved with it at that time and might have a better memory of the process. I know we had this in the hopper and going through the process for a while. I know that it was finally approved in July of 2018 is when the first final approval, if that's a thing that you want to say, the first final approval of the development agreement and the associated pieces were done at that time is in July. And I know that we had it in hand for a while before that.
Armando, you want to jump in with that?
Mayor Smith, members of the City Council, I'm Armando Ornelas, the Assistant Community Services Director. So actually the approvals were first for this project and it consisted of the development agreement, annexation, a comprehensive plan land use amendment, and rezoning occurred in June of 2018. Obviously, they had been in the pipeline for a year or two, but the first official action taken by the City Council was that June 2018 date. And then most recently, in February, you saw an amendment to the development agreement.
Thanks, sir.
Just for last point of clarification, Mr. Mayor, when we notice, we don't notice just the contiguous properties. We notice within a certain amount of feet. What's that number of feet we notice to?
I can answer that if you'd like, Armando. So it depends on the entitlement that's being requested. Typically for a conditional use permit, it's 500 feet. For many of the other entitlements like a rezoning and so forth, it would be 750 feet. But there is also a minimum lot count that needs to be notified. And in this case, because of the large lots, we actually notified within 1,500 feet of the site to get to 45 property owners.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to 9.1. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of a tentative map request for a 460 lot single family residential subdivision on a site approximately 386.87 acres in size located at 555 Highland Ranch Parkway. And this would be Ian again.
Mr. Mayor, I lost Ian. He's on his way back right now.
Okay.
Sorry, Ian.
That's fine. I saw myself leaving it. I thought, well, this should be interesting. All right. Mayor Smith, members of the City Council, Ian Crittenden, your Development Services Manager. I'm going to share my screen so you can see this presentation for the tentative map request for this first tentative map in Five Ridges. Apologies. Sometimes you got to click on stuff you weren't expecting to. Okay. This is a request for a 460 lot single family residential subdivision on 88.3 acres north of Highland Ranch Parkway and west of Pyramid Way. You can see the site outlined here in red. The city entered into a development agreement in June of 2018 for this site, and in January, or actually it was February of 2020, that development agreement was amended to reflect changes to the development plan. The development plan had evolved since initial approval of the development agreement as the master plan undertook additional analysis that had substantive impacts on site access and provisions of utilities, specifically municipal water. The portion of this site included in this tentative map is zoned SF6, which has a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet. However, the applicant is proposing to use the small lot standards permitted by code in some of the villages, specifically Village 6 and 7. The small lot standards allow smaller lots so long as the density of 7.3 units per acre is not exceeded. The proposed map meets the small lot standards and has a density of 5.21 dwelling units per acre. The site has a comprehensive plan land use designation of IDR, and the density of units within this tentative map complies with those limits contained in the development agreement. The agreement permits between 1,200 and 1,800 total units, and this tentative map is the first in what is anticipated to be a series of tentative maps that combine to form the greater development plan and will comply with the unit number requirement, that total number unit. The fiscal impact analysis was submitted with the development agreement that showed an overall positive fiscal impact to the city associated with this development. As the tentative map complies with that land plan and with the development agreement, an update to the fiscal impact analysis was not required for this tentative map. Access to this tentative map will be from Highland Ranch Parkway via Five Ridges Parkway, which is predominantly a reconstruction of the existing aggregate mine access road. Five Ridges Parkway will travel north to approximately the center of the site and intersect Antelope Ridge Parkway, which will turn west to connect with the existing water tower access road. This connection will provide secondary access to the site. As stated in the amended development agreement, this secondary access allows the developer to construct Five Ridges Parkway as a 2-lane rather than a 4-lane road. The agreement requires that the development agreement requires the developer to improve Highland Ranch Parkway and the intersection of Highland Ranch Parkway with Pyramid Way. The improvements that are required would be turning Highland Ranch Parkway to a 4-lane rather than a 2-lane road, and then the associated capacity improvements at Pyramid and then Highland Ranch Parkway's intersection. The improvement are required when one of 3 triggers are met. Any of those triggers are a tentative map request is submitted that brings the total number of dwelling units in the development to 650 or more. The level of service at Highland Ranch Parkway degrades below D, or the level of service of the intersection of Pyramid Way degrades below E. This tentative map request is the first in Five Ridges and is only requesting 460 lots, which does not trip that first trigger. The applicant submitted an analysis indicating that this tentative map will not degrade the level of service of Highland Ranch Parkway or its intersection with Pyramid Way to the level specified in the development agreement. The off-site transportation improvements required by the agreement are therefore not required with this tentative map. There are 12 findings associated with tentative maps. For this purpose, I have in these next few slides, combine them into groupings associated with context and not so much in numerical order. So if there's any confusion, just feel free to ask me a question. The proposed tentative map complies with the density standards of the zoning ordinance and the development agreement. The comp plan land use designation for the site is IDR, which requires 6 to 8 units per acre, and the SF6 zoning district has a maximum density of 7.3 units per acre. As proposed, this map would provide a density of 5.21 units per acre. This is lower than the minimum units per acre called out in the comprehensive plan. However, the Nevada revised statutes is very clear that when you have conflicts like that between your comprehensive plan and your zoning, you use the zoning regulations. And so this does comply with both the zoning and the development agreement, which calls out densities in that same area of 5.2 or so. In addition, this map supports the comprehensive plan, specifically goal H2, which is to promote a strong, diverse housing market that supports economic growth. Policy H1 to ensure sufficient, appropriate zoned areas that have access to infrastructure. Policy C4 requires sidewalks for pedestrians on all street networks within the city, and policy CF1, which requires that city services be provided at acceptable levels. Findings T2 and T7 have to do with streets. And this proposed development will have access from Highland Ranch Parkway. Trip generation for this tentative map is estimated at 4,379 average daily trips, with 460 peak hour trips. Street improvements necessary to serve this development will be installed after the triggers contained in the development agreement are met. Those triggers have not been met, and the existing street network that serves the site is sufficient to meet the needs of this request. Findings T3 and T9 requires consideration of outside agencies that regulate environmental and health concerns. The staff received comments from Washoe County School District, Washoe County Health District, the Regional Transportation Commission, and the Nevada Department of Transportation. In specific, the Washoe County Health District did submit a letter, but didn't have any specific requirements for this site. Just it was their general letter for future residential development. But compliance with the requirements of these outside agencies is required by condition number 4 on this tentative map. Findings T4 and T5 require the consideration of available water and sewer. The applicant has estimated that 155.58 acre feet of water per year will be needed. Water rights needed to serve this project will be supplied by the Sun Valley General Improvement District and must be in place or be dedicated with a final map. Condition 5 requires that to be so. According to the agreement or the development agreement, the availability of municipal water for this development is contingent upon the Sun Valley GID and the city entering into an agreement to allow the Sun Valley GID to locate its water utility infrastructure within city right-of-ways. This agreement must be approved by the city and the Sun Valley GID prior to the approval of a final map. Condition 6 reiterates this requirement. The applicant has estimated the average daily sewer flow for this development to be 414,000 gallons. The city sewer model shows sufficient capacity for this development. Findings T6 and T10 consider the availability of other public services. Police and fire protection will be provided by the city of Sparks. This site is not within the 4-minute travel time standard for Sparks Fire. All homes will have to be sprinkled. This requirement may be eliminated if the master developer can demonstrate to the approval of the fire chief that the dwelling units are within a 4-minute travel time. That really only becomes applicable if an additional fire station is built within the area. The development of this site will have an impact on Washoe County Public Schools. In a letter received from the Washoe County School District, it's estimated that this development will add 96 new elementary school students to Hall Elementary, 41 students to Shaw Middle School, and 44 to Spanish Springs High School. Spanish Spring High School is currently over capacity. However, the new Hug High School is expected to provide substantial relief to this school. Findings T8, T11, and T12. I'll now talk about, as we addressed in the previous item, we did talk about slopes, hilltops, and ridges required to the site. There are no floodplains on this site, so T8 is been addressed. The other identified impacts for the site are landscaping and architecture. Landscaping and architecture for this tentative map will be subject to the standards in the Sparks Municipal Code, as well as conditions 11, 12, and 16 of that conditional use permit that was just affirmed by the City Council. They have specific requirements addressing all of those things. And then finally, finding T12 requires proper notice that a meeting be held. Notice for tentative maps is accomplished via the posting of the agenda, and the Planning Commission and City Council fulfill the meeting requirements for this kind of an item for tentative maps. Staff and the Planning Commission have recommended approval of this item. That's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, the applicant's representative is here, and we do have a suggested motion if you need it.
Okay. Get a full screen, Lisa. Okay. Questions or comments? Mr. Dare.
Do you mind speaking to, I mean, we keep hearing traffic, and I've heard that over and over on the traffic side of it. And we definitely, I know we have layers if we're going to come back and visit if they hit certain peaks. How often will we be checking on that? How do we know? Can you just talk about the process of when we know we're hitting that level, that we know that we have a problem? Because there are many who would say, you know, your traffic study's nice and dandy, but it's already filled. So you're putting something else there. No traffic study can convince somebody that it's okay. But well, let's say it's built and it's causing major issues. At that point, do we get them moving? How does that work? Can you describe that for me?
Sure, I can talk about that a little bit. I think that if Amber Sosa or John Erickson are available, they may be able to more precisely talk about the traffic impacts and some of the traffic study pieces of this. However, I can tell you what our process has been thus far, and what we would continue to do is with new tentative maps, we do request that they update their traffic analysis and show how the current piece is going to impact the traffic at that location. And like with this one, we would require them to submit a documentation and a study that shows how they're impacting the trip generation and the level of service at the 2 points of interest, you know, the extension or the improvements to Highland Ranch and the intersection. And so I don't know if Amber or John would like to speak more specifically to that traffic impact analysis. I know that is a piece that's been of some concern. We felt like we'd addressed it, but we want to make sure that everybody kind of understands what's going on.
We got John and Amber on the TV set here. Who wants to speak to this? John? Amber?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Amber Sosa, Transportation Manager. Ian actually said that very, very well. With this tentative map, we did actually require them to update that level of service to make sure that we're not already to those triggers. That 650 number that you're seeing and you keep hearing about, that was the traffic engineer's way of backing into when we think those levels of service will trip. Adding in the additional layer of studying this again is just one more additional layer to make sure that we're not just hanging our hats on that 650 and that we're being proactive to make sure that we are not already hitting those levels where we would need to require the infrastructure.
Does that answer your question, Councilman Dare?
Yeah, I just think it's something I'd like to encourage us to keep an eye on. I mean, obviously traffic is everywhere and we have a lot of growth going on. And right now traffic, because of COVID-19, seems like, oh, we're not as bad. But once everything starts hitting on all cylinders again, we'll remember those days pretty clear. And so I just would encourage us to look at that. I know we will, but I know it's one of the biggest concerns beyond what we already have spoken about. Thank you.
Councilman,
any other further discussion?
Excuse me, Mayor. I'd like to add that we also have an opportunity as final maps come in to be reviewing the traffic. So we will be taking a look at those intersections in the segment of Highland Ranch as the final maps are coming through.
Thanks, John. Okay, is there any more discussion, comments?
I do, Dr. Abbott.
Mr. Abbott.
On the, I forgot which number it is, but on the sprinklers, if we were to sprinkle, say we're doing 100 houses and then we have station 6, is that then able to, the rest of the homes could not be sprinklered at that point, or that's able to be done, correct?
Yeah, that's the way that we formatted that condition, so that if that fire station is constructed and suddenly we have all or much of this development meeting the 4-minute response time, we don't have to come back through Planning Commission and City Council to amend that condition of approval. We've written into it essentially that the pressure release, the fire station gets built. Okay, now you've got to document it to the fire chief, and he needs to be comfortable with it. But if he's comfortable, then he can relieve you of the requirement to put in fire suppression in all the homes.
Awesome. And then my other one was on schools with the high school, the kids going to Spanish Springs. We have a Wild Creek High School coming in to take some of the Sun Valley kids. Is that property currently zoned? It is currently zoned to go to Spanish Springs, but with Wild Creek coming online, is there a conversation of those kids going over to Wild Creek, or?
I don't have an answer.
I know we're in the weeds.
I don't have an answer to that question. All I have is what was submitted to us from the Washington County School District when we sent them this application, and they indicated that the students from this location would go to Spanish Springs High School. That's what they told us. So if they have any plans for adjusting the zoning of those schools, it's not something they indicated in their letter to us. So we would expect them to go to Spanish Springs High School until told otherwise.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion?
I'm ready to make a motion if you like, sir.
Go ahead, Mr. Dare.
As I do, I'd like to at least just say for the record how important it is to get that our fire station in. I know that as we continue to grow, it's just something I'd like to point out there. So here's the motion. I move to approve the tentative map associated with PCN 19-0040 for 460 lot single family subdivision on a site 88.3 acres in size located in the S6 zoning district, adopting findings T1 through T12 and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report and subject to conditions of approval 1 through 16.
Okay, I have a motion looking for a second.
I'll second it. Have it.
Okay, Mr. Abbott, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Move on to 9.2. This is Neil. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the mayor's recommendation of an appointment to the Enterprise Fund Advisory Committee. Neil.
All right, start out by unmuting myself. Good afternoon, Mayor Smith and members of the City Council. For the record, Neil Crucier, City Manager, here today presenting the short-term appointment for somebody to join our Enterprise Fund Advisory Committee. As the mayor has already outlined, we were looking for somebody to fill a vacancy that comes from the commercial construction industry. We had 2 people apply to fill that position. It would run through the end of the calendar year. And the 2 gentlemen who applied for it were Matthew Robinson and Robert Sandoval. And if I'm not mistaken, the mayor's recommendation is that the council appoint Robert Sandoval to the position. With that,
Exactly. Yes.
Questions?
Yes. Questions, comments? Looking for a motion?
Make a motion. Move to confirm the mayor's appointment of Robert Sandoval to the Enterprise Fund Advisory Committee for a partial 4-year term from May 6, 2020 to December 31st, 2020.
Okay, we have a motion looking for a second.
I'll second.
Ms. Bybee has a second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
9.3, consideration, discussion, possible approval of a resolution R-3361. And that's Allison. There you are.
Good afternoon, Mayor Smith and City Council. I'm Assistant City Attorney Allison McCormick, and I'll be addressing both items 9.3 and 9.4 in this presentation. Both items are proposed resolutions amending processes for various city advisory committees. Item 9.3 addresses the Sparks Senior Citizens Advisory Committee, and item 9.4 addresses the Sparks Citizens Advisory Committee. Both committees were formalized by resolutions in the past, and after working with those resolutions for a while, staff has identified a couple of improvements to those processes. There are two main areas where processes for these committees can be improved. Those deal with the terms of appointment to these committees, as well as the secretary's duties. As far as appointment terms, the current resolutions state that members of these committees serve terms that are coterminous with their appointing elected official, but they are subject to reappointment every 2 years. In addition, there is an alternate, but the alternate doesn't automatically join the committee as a regular member if a seat becomes vacant. This involves a lot of staff time to keep these committee appointments full because of the relatively short terms. These proposed resolutions would make members' terms truly coterminous, so they would be 4-year terms, beginning and ending with the term of their appointing official. Also, if a regular member leaves, the alternate would automatically fill that regular seat unless the appointing official directs otherwise. This would mean that staff would only need to fill the alternate's seat. It would also provide more continuity in membership on these committees and a reduced burden on staff time keeping these committees full. As to the secretary's duties for these committees, currently a citizen member of each committee is the secretary. The secretary is responsible for compliance with the open meeting law, such as preparing and posting agendas and preparing minutes. The open meeting law is nuanced, and guidance from the Attorney General's office regarding the open meeting law changes pretty frequently. And posting agendas requires access to city and state websites and facilities that citizens don't normally have. To clear up those issues, staff is proposing that a city employee, rather than a member of the committee, would serve as the secretary. City employees have more access to open meeting law training and advice, which is consistently available to employees, but not necessarily to citizens. City employees also have access to city and state websites and facilities needed to post those agendas and minutes. This would also be consistent with other boards and commissions, from City Council to Planning Commission to the Parks and Recreation Commission and other city bodies. Therefore, staff recommends that City Council approve resolutions 3361 and 3362, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions or comments?
I have a comment, Abbott.
Mr. Abbott?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a great idea. Kind of helping with the senior board. We've had some people that just something came up, and it's kind of a nightmare, a lot of time consuming to get that appointment. So the alternate wants to apply to the main spot, and it just takes too much time. So it's awesome. I think we can take our alternates, which are there. They are, they're called alternates, to fill in that role. And then I'll definitely give a shout out for our clerk, Marcy, over the senior. She did a rock star job, and she did a good job. And it's definitely not for lack of our volunteers that have been helping. We're just trying to make this more streamlined for staff. So I'm supportive. I'm ready to make a motion. If we have no
Okay, Donald, make that motion. Do 9.3 first.
I move to approve resolution R-3361, amending processes for the Sparks Senior Citizens Advisory Committee.
Okay, we have a motion looking for a second.
Second.
Mr. Lawson with the second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. 9.4. Looking for a motion?
I'll go ahead if you want.
Okay, Mr. Lawson has the motion.
I move to approve resolution R-3362, amending the processes for the Spark Citizens Advisory Committee.
Okay, we have a motion looking for a second.
Second.
I heard Charlene, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay,
Thank
we're
you.
9.5. Does anybody need to take a break? We've been at it for 2.5 hours. 5 minutes. Okay, we'll move on. Point, huh? Did you not talk fast enough?
No, I'm good. I've only drank a gallon of water.
I know. Okay, 9.5, consideration, discussion, and possible approval to submit an application for the Office of Criminal Justice Assistance 2020 Justice Assistant Grant. Chief Kroll, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. Mayor Smith, members of council, for the record, Pete Kroll, your police chief. Here before you today to request permission to apply for grants, specifically from the Office of Criminal Justice Assistance, the 2020 JAG or Justice Assistance Grant, excuse me. The intent of this would be to purchase investigative equipment in the total of approximately $84,000. The three items that we are looking to purchase are the purchase of what's called an Ocean Systems Tower. That device would allow us to much more rapidly sort through video evidence looking for specific items of interest. For example, if we were looking for a blue pickup truck, we can program the computer system so that it will identify the blue pickup truck rather than watch 5 to 6 hours of surveillance video. The second item is what's called a Tolino forensic workstation. That workstation is something that would allow us to much more rapidly download and decipher evidence and information from cell phones. And the third item would be a laser scanning system, which we would use primarily in major traffic accident investigations. This device could also be used at crime scenes and would allow us to, for example, if we had the unfortunate instance of a major traffic crash that was 400 to 500 feet long, it might take us several hours to appropriately diagram and mark that roadway for documentation. This device would produce a 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional product that would take a matter of minutes to assess, download, and create. So we would be much more efficient in the uses of our personnel and our time, should we be granted permission to apply for and ultimately receive these grants. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council might have. And staff respectfully recommends approval of the item.
Okay, questions or comments?
I have a question for you, Chief. It sounds like all of these are going to be incredible time-saving instruments. Have you calculated what it looks like they'll impact if we actually were able to get all that equipment?
Councilman, I have not. It would unfortunately depend upon the number of either major crimes or major crashes, that sort of thing, that would occur in a given calendar year, let's say. The same would be true of the videotape and the cell phone information. We really wouldn't know until we had those incidents occur, which of course we hope they don't. But they're exponential. The example that I gave you of the traffic crash would be an excellent example of just one instance.
So potentially each one of these could, depending on the case, could save you hours of time.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, looking for a motion, Mr. Anderson?
I'll go ahead and make the motion. Move to direct the Sparks Police Department to submit an application for the OCGA 2020 JAG grant in the amount of approximately $84,000 for the purchase of the Ocean Systems Tower and the training Tolino forensic workstation and the laser scanning system.
Okay, we have a motion. Look for a second.
I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Bybee, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, look like Kevin, you got 9.6, 9.7, and possibly 9.8.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. 4 in a row.
Okay. We'll go 9.6, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of a construction contract AC 5667 for the Tyler Way and 18th Street Sanitary Sewer Project. You're up, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. For the record, Kevin Porter, Utility Manager. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to bring up an exhibit of our Tyler Way and 18th Street Sanitary Sewer Project. This exhibit will look familiar to council. You've seen it a few times now, most recently on April 13th. Construction contract as with Sierra Nevada Construction. They were the low bidder on the project. Our estimate was $1.3 million for the work, and their low bid came in at $1,011,007. And the city will be getting a reimbursement in the order of between $200,000 and $300,000 for TUMWA associated with relocating a water line that's sitting directly above the sewer. So hit to the city on this is approximately will be approximately $800,000 for the project. This was a part of our fiscal year 20 capital improvement plan. It was originally scoped out of our sewer master plan, and staff recommends approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions from the council.
Questions or comments?
Ready to make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Lawson, make your motion.
I move to approve construction contract AC 5667 for the Tyler Way and 18th Street sanitary sewer project with Sierra Nevada Construction in the amount of $1,011,007.
Okay, we have a motion. Looking for a second.
Second that.
Mr. Dare is a second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. 9.7. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of a construction contract AC 5666 for the sanitary sewer manhole rehab project. Kevin.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. And for the record, Kevin Porter, Utility Manager. I'm going to share my screen once again. And what you should be seeing now is an exhibit for our sanitary sewer manhole rehab project. This is a project that will also seem familiar to council because during our fiscal year 21 CIP workshop, we spent a little bit of time showing a video of a manhole with significant groundwater infiltration. If council will recall that video, this project was the project that I mentioned that we had programmed in our fiscal year 20 CIP, and will be our first attempt at really attacking these manholes. We've got 70 sanitary sewer manholes planned for this project. You can see their location on the exhibit provided, as well as the severity of the infiltration that we have recorded through our inspections. This was put out to bid, and the low bidder was National Coating and Lining in the amount of $638,849. Engineer's estimate was $702,000. National Coating and Lining has significant experience in the region with doing this sort of work. So we're glad to see that they put in a bid with the city. Just want to highlight that our main focus here is to mitigate that water that's entering the collection system and ultimately ending up at Tumwharf. It's taking up capacity at Tumwharf, and it's also, it costs money to treat it unnecessarily. So our aim is to reduce those two impacts to Tumwharf and also the sanitary sewer collection system as a whole. Staff recommends approval of the contract. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Okay, any questions or comments?
I just want to see how excited I am about this, the potential that it could end up, how it could affect our sewage plant and some of the water there. Just looking at these numbers, sometimes we're spending different kinds of money and it's hard because it feels like we're just replacing something, we're fixing something, but this fix actually has the potential to really help us in some big strides. So good job, good find, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion?
Abbott.
Mr. Abbott?
I was just gonna say, I think it's awesome because I know we're putting sensors to measure the flow to see what reductions we're seeing. So we're not just making a best guess. We're actually seeing what investment this is to see what improvements we're making down at the sewer plant. So good job on that.
Okay, any other comments? Ms. Bybee?
I'm ready to make a motion if you're ready,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Okay, I move to approve construction contract AC 5666 for the sanitary sewer manhole rehab project with National Coating and Lining in the amount of $638,849.
Okay, we have a motion. Look for a second.
Second.
Mr. Dare, second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, 9.8, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of a professional services contract, AC 5665, for the sanitary sewer manhole rehab project with Brown and Caldwell. Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, Kevin Porter, Utility Manager for the record. And this item is complementary to the previous item. This is a contract, professional services contract for the testing and inspection of the manhole work that's going to be done by the National Coating and Lining contractor. Brown Caldwell will also be doing some construction management services for us under this contract. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen once again and get that shared. And what you should be seeing now is a photo of a confined space entry. Are you seeing that photo now, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I'm sharing this photo to help me kind of describe the effort that's required for the testing and inspection along with this project. On most of our traditional underground utility projects, we certainly have the capability to inspect those and do the inspection and testing primarily in-house for those projects where we dig a trench, construct a pipe, and then our inspectors watch the backfill, and then ultimately the pavement patch that's done over the top of that. This project's a little bit different for us. Since this project requires the rehabilitation of a manhole on the inside of the manhole, it requires that the tester and the inspector do a confined space entry following the contractor to ensure that that epoxy coating that's applied is applied correctly and applied thoroughly per the specifications of the contract. So that the tester and inspector doesn't have the ability to just stand above the project and watch from above. They actually have to go into the manhole, do a confined space entry, which consists of a little bit more effort than we're used to in terms of testing and inspection. And so that's the main reason that we've hired Brown and Caldwell to assist us with this. They've got extensive experience both doing the design side and then also the testing and inspection for this type of work. What this photo shows is the effort that it takes to insert someone into a sanitary sewer manhole following OSHA's guidelines for confined space entry. Certainly you have to have the equipment to get them down in the manhole, get them back out, and then really everything's designed around if there's an emergency and someone loses consciousness in the manhole, how to get them out safely and in a timely manner. And so we just wanted to show this photo and kind of explain that for council's benefit. With that, the contract amount is $169,950 with Brown and Caldwell. Staff recommends approval. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on this contract.
Questions or comments from the council? Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, I do have a question for you, Kevin. So Truckee Meadows Water Authority, we saw them experience failure on some rehab work that they performed on pipes. And just out of curiosity, and I mean, I hope and pray this would never happen in this, but if, for example, we found that the process failed, how would it fall back on the inspector, or how does that process work?
Thank you for that question, Councilman Anderson, and it'll be a two-part answer. The first part to that answer is that we built in our specifications to require a warranty period with the contractor, and the warranty period is for a year, so we'll get a full 12 months after installation of this product to be able to observe its performance and see whether it holds up. And that was that period of time was specified from past experience, both with Brown and Caldwell, and us reaching out to the county in Reno. It seems like if these products have a failure, it is within the first 12 months, and so this warranty period will then cover us on our manholes over that. We will be keeping a close eye on them over that warranty period, and then certainly they will be included in our normal annual inspections on our sewer collection system, and so we'll be able to track their performance over time. The second part to that question is I'll answer it by saying that it's one of the reasons that we reached out to Brown and Caldwell for this work. They supported both Washoe County and the city of Reno with similar manhole rehab type projects over the last several years. And those projects were very successful in the performance over time. And the way that they specify the product and how the product needs to be applied, and then also the way that they do their testing and inspection on the backside, all those things work together for us, at least for the city, to mitigate as much as we can the threat of a product performing poorly.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Mr. Dare.
I just want to volunteer Donald to go down that hole if for some.
He's probably already done it.
You got a GoPro, it's waterproof.
I'd certainly like to invite any council members out to at least watch the confined space entry occur and the product be applied if they are so willing.
I'm ready to make.
I don't feel well. I'm not going. Mr. Dare.
Would you like me to make a motion?
Go ahead.
I move to approve professional services contract AC 5665 sanitary sewer manhole rehabilitation project with Brown Caldwell for construction administration, testing, and inspection in the amount of $169,950.
Okay, we have a motion. Looking for a second.
I'll second.
Mr. Anderson with a second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, one more, Kevin. 9.9. Consideration, discussion, possible approval of a two-party agreement, AC 5668, with the Andrea Phoenix Acquisition LLC for Flow Water. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council, for my final time this afternoon. Kevin Porter, utility manager. And this is a two-party agreement. This is a temporary agreement with the party that you just named for the sale of treated effluent. This party is in the process of acquiring some rights to the old DeAndrea golf course. We have not received any development applications on this. However, they certainly are anxious to get some irrigation water on the property to begin restoring the turf and some of the landscaping that's been lost since the DeAndrea golf course has been closed. So they've reached out to the city. Mr. Martini negotiated an agreement with them for the term of 2 years with an option to extend for a third year if both parties are supportive. The amount of water is around the amount that DeAndrea used previously, upwards of 500 acre feet, and the effluent is provided from Tum Wharf, Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility. The party, DeAndrea Phoenix Acquisition LLC, will be required to obtain their own discharge permit through the Nevada Department of Environmental Protection, as well as an approved effluent management plan from NDEP. The agreement that we put forth with them provides a couple of different rate structures depending on whether they dedicate water rights or not. And those would account for whether the city has to work to manage the water rights within for a return flow purpose within TROA. And with that, staff is certainly recommends approval of this item. We're anxious to see that an entity is stepping forward and hopeful to see some improvements at the golf course. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Questions or comments?
I have a quick question. Kevin,
Webby.
it says that the agreement provides two rate options, A and B. Is that going to be further determined by staff? That's not something we're voting on right now, is which of the rate options will happen? Is that up to the staff to make that decision? We don't have to decide that?
That's correct, Councilwoman Bybee. You do not have to decide that right now, approving the agreement. We put both rate options into the agreement to allow the DeAndrea Phoenix Acquisition LLC to be the deciding factor whether they have water rights available to dedicate for the return flow management purposes in the Truckee River that's required under TROA, the Truckee River Operating Agreement. If they do that, then they pay a slightly lower rate. If they do not have those water rights to dedicate, then they pay a slightly higher rate, and that is to make up for the city having to manage those water rights for the return flow purpose within TROA.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, actually, I just want to say, Kevin, I want to thank you as well as John Martini for your work on this, your team coming together. This is exciting. It's been an eyesore for so long for all the people that live over there and pretty much all of Sparks to see that go dead. So yeah, this is exciting. We're looking to see what they can do with it. It looks like they could do some beautiful things over there with a little bit of water. So thank you.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Look for a motion?
I'll
Mr.
make a
Anderson?
motion.
Yep.
Move to approve the two-party agreement AC 5668 with DeAndrea Phoenix Acquisition LLC for the temporary sale of treatment effluent.
Okay, we have a motion looking for a second.
I'll second.
Okay, a second from Ms. Bybee. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. 9.10, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the Together We See Sparks creative place making plan for Victorian Square. And is that Francine? Hi, Francine. Francine, are you muted?
I am not. My computer, as soon as I joined, it hung up. Sorry about that.
Okay, so we got you now. I think.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry, my computer keeps on stalling a bit.
We've got your screen.
All right, thank you. For the record, Francine Burge, Special Events Supervisor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure to present to you the creative placemaking plan for downtown. Also in attendance on this call is Shelley Willis, who authored the plan as part of the project. So the genesis of this plan came from the Tourism and Facility Revitalization Committee in 2016. This also created the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee, also known as the ACAC, to give the arts oversight. Before I dive into the plan, I'd like to define what creative placemaking is. It is the strategic process which partners, public, private, and nonprofit, shape the physical and social character of a neighborhood or an entire city around arts and culture activities. This is why this plan goes beyond public art and sculptures, because we are working to create a community using all the tools in the toolbox with art at the center. So this plan was a 2-year in-depth study and analysis. I'd also like to mention that it is also consistent and complements the Ignite Comprehensive Master Plan for the City of Sparks. This is a well-rounded plan that describes not only where we're going, but it also has described where we've been. So this document will be beneficial for decades. Anyone can read the plan at cityofsparks.us/together. Now, before I dive into the recommendations, I'd like to describe the funds really quickly. One key element that describes the funding of the plan describes three sources: short-term, base funding, and partnerships. Short-term, those funds are already allocated from the Tourism and Facility Revitalization Committee and the Small Arts Fund, which is managed by the ACAC. This is this $175,000 that's mentioned in the staff report. The plan also goes into base funding, which means that we should begin to explore public funds or a 1% for art like other cities have. The city also describes partnerships. The plan describes scenarios where funding can be leveraged through private and public partnerships. So let's talk about some of these short-term goals. One is the temporary art project. This is a rotating art project that will change out art on a regular basis using using events and technology to encourage people to tour the collection during events or on their own. Doing a commission. We may want to wait on commissioning a unique piece of art for downtown until the plaza is ready, since it seems like it could be the main gathering place. Policy. The city staff needs help writing municipal code and policy. This policy will clarify our process to keep things fair and legal. Topics will include the role of the ACAC, donation policy, selection, funding, oversight, and more. Human resource. While we had anticipated new personnel in fiscal year 21, we will continue to pursue this in future budgets so that the plan can be successful. The ACAC will continue to seek new ways of using the ACAC and also finding ways to get the Together We See Sparks back involved with our programs and projects. And lastly, we can't talk about downtown without talking about events. It's important that events and arts coexist using space planning and good communication. Temporary art projects. I'm going to describe a few of these that we've talked about. This could be working with events like to bring in international art, like the lighted objects that Reno brought in for their Winter Light Festival last year. We could also use the kiosks for artwork or short-term light installations. An artist in residence program. These live workspaces could be provided for 3 to 6 months, utilizing artists for education programs and temporary art projects. Gathering spaces. Utilizing art in planning encourages people to stay and hang out. Examples could be interactive art displays, green space for kids and dogs, lighting plans that are artful and also promote safety. Branding and signage. The temporary art project will have branding and signage as part of one of the short-term recommendations. At some point, we will need to create a cohesive brand for our downtown district. And education. To keep the interest in the arts going, we need to make sure that education is a portion of each project, partnering with the schools and the Parks and Rec before and after school program. And lastly, the decommissioning of this piece will allow for more place-based art without giving up room for events. We would like to encourage our elected officials, staff, and our community to embrace the future by leveraging our momentum to achieve the community's goals for unique and economically thriving Victorian Square. Timing will be key in the rollout of this plan. And we'd also like to take this opportunity to give special thanks to city staff, committee members, artists, partners for their contribution and expertise and passion for this plan. And at this point, I welcome your questions and your feedback.
Okay. Francine, I have a question for you. The old Lowe's building is artist lofts. Are you going to take advantage of that as opposed to worried about our own?
Which artist lofts?
The one on Audi Boulevard that was going to be Renowned Hospital is now going to be artist lofts.
Yes, I've already been in communication with them, and they will definitely be a part of our process.
Okay.
Having artists so close in our area will be great for the whole city.
No, good deal. Can we do a full screen so we can get the council? Whoever does that, Francine, or there we go. Okay. Any questions or comments for Francine?
I'd like to comment.
Yes, Ms. Bivey.
Francine, I can't thank you enough for your time, your vision, your leadership, and get in kind of herding all the cats together to some incredibly creative. I was glad to be a part of it, but you all are the artists, and meeting the vast array of people who have been influential in helping us create this vision, look at the placemaking. But the most important thing, I think, was really the public process and being able to go into Victorian Square during our special events and really gather input from our residents and our visitors. And I think that is, we get more buy-in from people, and it becomes more of a community, not just, you know, the Art and Culture Commission or the City Council. It becomes just something we share and something that people want to see succeed. And I think that's really the key. And I know creative placemaking, that's the goal. So I'm excited for us moving forward. I know we have a little bit of a, we're on a little bit of a pause right now with the COVID-19 situation, with our downtown Victorian Square, and what we're looking at for even for this summer. We're not sure, but I have faith that we're going to move. We're moving forward. Things will pick up, and that this plan can get moving quickly. And just want a big shout out to everyone involved and for all their creative energy and talent brought to the, that will continue to bring through, so that our Victorian Square district will be something truly unique and something that all of us can be proud of and can enjoy. So thank you again.
Okay, any other comments? Mr. Dare?
Yeah, good job. I know you've been working on this for a while, so it's nice to feel like have a plan together. I know walking into some of what we're financially situation, my question, is there a way that people, if they want to get behind art and they want to donate towards what you're doing, how would they do that? Because I do know our funds might get tight, but there are people I know that see this as valuable as anything else. And is there a way that they could do that? Because if there's designated funds, that makes it easier to make sure we get rolling. So you have a bridge for that or some information?
Anybody can give to that at this time. Having a specific fundraising campaign has not been established yet, but yes, we could be doing that in the short term.
Probably that'd be one thing I would encourage, but I'd also, are you attached to some 501c3 that if someone gave? Because I know we're not. So that's probably part of my question. Do we have that foundation that we're working with or something in that fashion where someone donated in that they could give tax write-off and things like that?
Most of our projects are done through our local arts agency, which is Sierra Arts Foundation. If we took on a project, perhaps with this Makers Space, if they had their own 501c3, we could have donations go through that organization as well.
Thank you. That's an idea for you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I move to approve the Together We See Sparks creative placemaking plan for Victorian Square.
Okay, we have a motion, looking for a second.
I'll second it, Abbott.
Mr. Abbott is a second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thanks so much, Francine. Good job.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Move on to 10.1, a public hearing item. Public hearing as required by NRS 354.596 to allow public comment on the tentative budget of the city of Sparks for fiscal year 2021. Mr. Kronk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I believe I have the next two items for you. This first one is simply we need to open up a public hearing, as you read, in compliance with Nevada law that requires that we have a public hearing and get public comment on the tentative budget.
Okay.
A reminder is that the tentative budget was filed in compliance with state law on April 15th. And so law requires that we hold a public hearing on that sometime during the last 2 weeks of May. So
Okay.
with that, I don't have any other comments, and there's no action needed for this item.
Okay, then I'll open up the public comment period. Lisa, do we have anybody?
As a reminder, public comment for this item is now open. So if you would like to speak on this item, press *9 on your telephone or indicate your desire to speak by raising your hand from your computer.
I had a plane go over.
I'm not showing anybody, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, you're not showing anybody. Okay, I'll close the public comment period and bring it back. And now we'll go to 9.11. Mr. Kronk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jeff Kronk, for the record, your Chief Financial Officer. This is now we're seeking your approval on the final budget. So the tentative budget is what we just heard on the public comment period, but this is for the final budget for upcoming one. So again, just a little background. We are required by law to pass that final budget by June 1st. So that's by next Monday. So we're bringing this to you today, but this is a culmination of a lot of work that really happened since last October for most of the departments and really prior to October for our budget staff. So a lot of work has gone into this. What we're presenting to you today is the actual state forms. So it's not real pretty. It's not the user-friendly version, but it is essentially the same as what we presented to you in what we call the city manager's budget recommendations that were presented to you on April 27th. The difference between what we presented then and what we're giving to you now in the state forms is the just some cleanup items that are immaterial, and we call them cleanup items because they really are immaterial to the numbers. An example would be when you approved the personnel reclassifications on May 11th, we have included those so into the final budget documents that you have. So items such as that, things that we would know of, or just things that we have found since then. So all your fiscal policies are the same that we had originally talked about at the workshop, the budget workshop in late February, and got your approval on it, and then subsequently had built the tentative budget on those fiscal policies, incorporated those into the direction that we received at the workshop into what we call again the city manager's final budget recommendations. Presented all that on April 27th, and nothing in the final budget has changed from those fiscal policies. Notably, probably the number one policy is the ending fund balance of 5%. You recall the conversation we had in February, seeking your direction to drop that ending fund balance if we needed to, in order to address some new needs. Well, the world changed since then. So we're expecting that we're still targeting that 5%, but we're probably going to get there in a much different way. So what we're trying to do is pass a budget as if the COVID-19 economic crisis didn't exist, because frankly, we didn't have data post that. We're still operating on data that we received in January and February before the world really changed on us. So this is essentially what we're expecting the world to have looked like before the crisis happened. So there's really three reasons we want to do that. Primary reasons. One, again, is insufficient data. So if we were to reduce our revenues, as we know is going to happen, it would be arbitrary at this point because we really don't know how much that reduction needs to happen. So we know, for example, or I could say this, that we know we're going to file an incorrect budget. So we have the choice. Do we file an incorrect budget that shows revenues too high or too low? So instead of making an arbitrary decision and try to determine what our revenues might be and hard code that, if you will, into our budget, we're trying to take a stab at saying, let's file a budget according to what we thought the world was going to be. So again, the first reason we're doing that is because there's just insufficient data to do otherwise with any sense of accuracy. The second reason we want to do this is really to provide some budget and fiscal flexibility in order to manage this as it does unfold. So again, we are not going to get our first data point for lost sales, which is the largest revenue losses that we're expecting. We're not going to get that data point until this week, but after we're asking you to pass the final budget. And that first data point is March's sales, and that's only half a month regarding the lockdown, if you will. So what this will do, it'll allow us to target our expenses and reduce in a more strategic way, if you will, as the events unfold. So we would still have the flexibility that we need within the budget in order to do that. Again, if we were to reduce our budgeted revenues, I would also have to reduce our budgeted expenditures. And we as an organization aren't ready to do that in a formal process and hard code that into the budget. So that would severely cripple, if you will, our ability to be flexible and target our spending, both spending and spending reductions in more of a strategic manner. The third reason we want to file a budget that is really kind of a pre-COVID financial emergency, if you will, is that it provides a baseline for us as we look forward into the fiscal 22, fiscal 23, and so forth. This is going to provide us an idea of what we expected the world to look like before this ever happened, and theoretically, how long this may take us to emerge from this. And then when we do emerge from this, what it's going to look like. So we're going to need this data as a good benchmark as we plan going forward, because this is pretty much how we had decided this is what we need to run our city and provide the services that we need to provide according to what we thought the world was going to look like. So those are the three reasons that we're looking to seek your approval to file a budget that's pre-COVID. But all that being said, that doesn't mean that we're not going to act. So, I think it's important to realize that a budget it sets the authorization to spend up to certain amounts. And that authorization is set by this budget in all of our funds. But we can always underspend, right? We can't overspend. That's what the law requires. We can always underspend. We can't overspend our expenditures. So when we're asking for higher expense budget, if you will, again, that gives us all the flexibility that we think we would need in order to act. And as a for example, if I can continue this, we already have items that we've identified really over the last several years, and this is some of these are built into your fiscal policy. So again, we're trying to file a budget that is in accordance with the policy direction. So as a for example, the ways we're going to be able to attack this crisis, this economic crisis, is really two-part. One being more of a risk management, a use of our reserves, which we have built up over time since the last recession, and also have built into our financial policy. So if you recall our conversations, especially in February when we're talking about these, we built in quite a bit of flexibility into our policies to address times that are unknown. So for example, we have a stabilization fund. That's exactly for this type of a purpose, whether it's a natural disaster from a flood or an earthquake or an economic disaster. So it's absolutely appropriate. We have budgeted a transfer in from our vehicle fund. Not something that we want to do, but it's there if we need to. So this is an item that is at our disposal that we can utilize and tap into if we need to, and we won't know if we need to until the subsequent months, starting this week actually. We have a repayment from the subsidies that the general fund made to the redevelopment agency. We hadn't been able to pay that back in past years because the health of the redevelopment agency too wasn't such that allowed us to do that. But fortunately, the property taxes and the overall health of that fund allowed us to do that, and that's something that you've actually approved, and we're expecting to move forward on that. Other things that we do are more of a not use of our reserves so much, but just actions, like I mentioned before, more targeted and strategic. So, and that involves the city manager hiring freeze. And I think our city manager, Neil Kreutz, has mentioned before, that's not a hard freeze, if you will, but it gives us flexibility to, to recommend hiring positions as they come up if they're critical, right? But we can freeze the positions that make more sense to do so. So other things that we're working on right now, and again, trying to get ahead of all of this, is again, more targeted reductions within our departments after we're looking at all of our core services and trying to, if not rank them, at least, judge importance of everything that we do throughout our departments at a program level, which is a very low level within our budget setting environment, and get an idea of what is more palatable versus what's not as palatable. So, and these are all things that we're gonna be bringing in front of you as we go along. Some things by law we're required to seek your approval, such as use of the stabilization fund. And then other things we're gonna absolutely inform you as we're going along, and it's going to be a joint decision process. So all that being said, we're seeking to file a budget again that was kind of looking at things in pre-COVID environment, but that doesn't mean that we're certainly not acting. And in fact, we are trying to get in front of this thing. What this budget allows us to do is give us the flexibility to act accordingly. So with that, those are all the comments I had, but I am prepared to answer any questions at all. And other than that, we're just seeking your approval on the document that's in front of you today.
Okay, questions or comments? Seeing none, we're looking for motion to adopt the final budget. Mr. Dare.
I have a couple questions, sorry. What are you just going to, so we expect like a monthly update? I say this more, I know we will have some of our updates we end up having, but when it comes to our community, when we're putting out a budget that we know is not efficient in a sense, it's what it is, we're doing what we can, and then we're going to adjust to it. Are we going to come back, is our goal to come back in a month? Is our goal to come back in a week? What is the ultimate estimation of a plan so people can know what to expect?
So, Councilman Dare, you kind of broke up on me a little bit, so I'll try to repeat what I thought I heard you say. Were you asking whether we're coming back to you in a couple of weeks or a month with like a revised budget?
Well, just once we can see what the facts can hit us with. So when our constituents expect to hear back from us on to the best of our ability.
Oh yeah. Okay. So as data comes in, thank you for that question. As data comes in, we're going to be, much more knowledgeable to be able to do that. So, it's a little frustrating, and I acknowledge that, across the board, as far as everybody's kind of waiting to see, what it is. But, we don't even have like sub data points. For example, I think you all probably saw the headline. I believe it came out in Saturday's news relating to Friday's work about the unemployment. Nevada set a record, right? Over 28% unemployment. The problem with that is I don't know the underlying mix of that. So I assume most of those job losses and that unemployment is probably worse in Southern Nevada than it is in Northern Nevada. But I'm even still waiting on that sub data point. But I call it a sub data point because really for us it's how the revenues are coming in. So we'll know a little bit more each month. So what I'm really anticipating is this is going to be a cash flow management process. So we're probably going to come before you with items such as I mentioned before, the drawdown of the stabilization fund, likely in July or August, as the cash flow really starts to become an issue. So this will be it'll feel slow, but when we look back on it, it'll actually go pretty quick. And what we really need is just a few data points, meaning a few months under our belt to kind of get an idea of what April means, for example, when everything shut down compared to say May when we're starting to reopen some things. So as we see things, I think our plan is to come before you and kind of keep you in the loop as to how we think we need to address this and at what level. And then we're going to use this data too to come into the fall time period when we're start looking at fiscal 22 budget and in outer years and do a better planning process once we have some solid data under our belts. Did that answer your question? Again, you were a little bit breaking up on me, but I think that's what I heard.
It did. That's good. And I think it's also important just at large for people to know our approach to this is that we are alone in the sense that we're not counting on federal money because we don't know that it's going to be there. And so a lot of people keep hearing about different possible stimulus things for cities and this and that. But at this point, we have not seen anything. I just want to communicate that clear too. We've not received anything. So we're moving forward as a city that just knows we take care of the correct business, make hard decisions, and just those are coming. And I say good job. We're in the middle of it, and continue all the things you're doing. But thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, Mr. Kreutz?
Jeff, would you take a couple of minutes and walk the mayor and council through, kind of the handful of tools that we've already developed and had some conversations about that they'll be able to apply as we get into this? I'd like to be able to paint that picture for the broader public.
Sure. Part of that is exactly what I was just talking about as far as it's a two-part process. One being, one-time mitigation actions that we built into our policies. As far as some of our use of our reserves, if you will. Another example of that is something we have not decided on, but use of what we call like a premium holiday from our health insurance fund. That's another option that's on the table. That's again not decided on. That's something we're considering. We have to consider the health of the fund in order to do that. But that's essentially it's a cash flow measure in that nobody, including the city, the employees, or the retirees, would pay into that fund for a month. That would generate some savings. So, and again, that's better than reducing the premium, for example, because that takes many months to see a benefit. Whereas a 1 month holiday or a 2 month holiday or whatever we can justify, if at all, would generate a quick infusion of cash, if you will. So, again, we talked about specifically, the items within the departments, and we're ranking those as on a core service level. Other items that we can do is looking at our capital plan, which we already have, but there's more that can be there. So, for example, are we able to, which again we built into the policy structure, would we be able to transfer 1% of the gas and electric franchise fees, which we've done in the past for GERP in the past, but could we redirect that into the general fund to offset this this crisis? Another thing is, can we delay funding on the GERP? The Golden Eagle Regional Park, some of the replacement maintenance that's going on out there. So that's just an example of some of the activities. And again, everything is on the table, and not much is decided right now. But that's the purpose of this, is that it's giving us time to be active and proactive. Gives us time to analyze what makes the most strategic sense. So did that help, Neil?
It did. So thank you very much for doing that. And I would also like to follow up there and offer up that perhaps at the second meeting of every month for the foreseeable future, we have a standing item on the agenda that speaks to what actions we have taken, what information we have, just so that we're sharing the information with all of our elected officials and more broadly with the public. So if that's something you're interested in seeing, we would be more than happy to do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Ms. Bybee.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate your explanation. And I guess, because people see this and they wonder how, there is that question, how can you do a budget that we know won't be right? But I appreciate the fact that that's good accounting practices and your recommendation with your expertise to give us the flexibility, and that we know our income is going to be less. We know our expenses we're going to have to look at, but given the flexibility, because we don't know how bad or maybe not so bad that things will be, I appreciate the flexibility of being able to address that as we move along, because again, we're in uncharted waters of somewhere we've never been. This isn't like the recession. This is totally a new novel experience that we all get to live through and try to survive and do our best to do that. So I appreciate your presentation. I'm ready to make a motion, Mr. Mayor, unless there's other comments.
We can go ahead and make a motion. We'll have a discussion period again.
Okay. I move to adopt the final budget for the City of Sparks for the fiscal year 2020-2021 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion looking for a second.
Make a second.
Mr. Anderson? Mr. Anderson has a second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to 9:12. Discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding the annual performance review of City Manager Neil Kreutz. Mindy, welcome.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, it is evening.
Mindy Falk, Human Resources Director. This today really is your agenda item. The City Manager Neil Kreutz employment contract requires that the City Council review his performance on or before the last City Council in May. So since this is the last City Council in May, here we are. In addition to reviewing his performance, the City Council may recommend to approve a merit increase or other changes to the contract. Any increase would need to be within his pay band. I'm here to facilitate the process today like I would for any other department head. I can answer any questions about the process, or I can go ahead and let you begin with any comments you may have about Mr. Kreutz's performance.
Why don't we go with comments, because there's a couple motions in here. One concerns the extension of his contract as well.
Correct.
So comments from the council. Mr. Dare.
I just want to speak to, I think he's done a great job, and I think he's done a good job of, I like how he's structuring things. I like how he's leading his team and our team all together. And so I'm pleased, and it's been good. It's kind of weird that it's gone so quick. I can't believe we're already right here. That's actually a good thing. Usually when it goes real slow, it means you really had a rough time of it, but time just kind of goes so fast. But I like the processes we do. I like that. I believe he definitely comes with the leadership skills needed, but he also allows all of us to, walk together and speak into things. And I appreciate that. And I think we can all continue to learn from each other and make sure this is running well. But thank you.
Okay, other comments?
I'll chime in if I can.
Mr. Abbott.
I think just everything that's happening with COVID, he's doing a great job leading you. This isn't a normal situation, and he's definitely shining, keeping us in the loop. I'm sure you guys get the calls too. He called, I think, Sunday morning, which is great. It's Sunday early morning, but they're important phone calls that he's taking the time out of his life and to keep us informed. I think so. Definitely doing a good job there.
Thanks, Donald. Anybody else? Mr. Anderson.
Actually, I just want to say, Neil, I think you've been doing a fine job, especially during these crazy times, that your leadership has really shown through. And I want to say thank you for your offer that you put out on the table as far as taking your willingness to take a cut. And I think that shows incredible leadership as well. So thank you for those things as well.
Anybody else? Ms. Bybee.
I would just like to say, obviously, I'll echo, our situation right now requires good leadership at the top, as not just the electeds, but the management of this city. And what I really appreciate is the realignment of your managers and staff. And at first I thought it was, I was kind of a little apprehensive because especially the older we get, change is not as easy. And but yet I'm someone who embraces change too, and it made a lot of sense. And so I really appreciate how that realignment has worked, and your real push to have us reach out to department heads for our communications with the CC to you, but not everything had to go directly to you, that we could go to your department heads to get quick answers and to work directly with them. And I think that that makes things go faster and a little more efficiently. And I want to thank you for that.
Neil, I want to thank you for the communication level that you and I have. I enjoy talking to you because you keep me informed, and that's very important for me. And I hope I'm keeping you informed. I like the fact that your realignment is working. And if it didn't work, I'm sure you would pull the plug on that and change it around. I like the fact that you take staff and practice their presentations before the council. I mean, it streamlined it, incredibly. So just keep doing the same job. I'm in total favor of extending your contract for a year. Of course, I don't vote on that, but that would be my recommendation as well. So thanks for everything you've been doing, Neil, and looking forward to working with you. Okay, any other questions or comments? Mr. Lawson.
Neil, just gonna say ditto, save time.
Okay. It's good stuff. Okay, Mindy, what do you want to do first? You want to do the, I guess all we're gonna do is extend his contract, be one motion. And
It looks
then,
like, Neil, do you want to comment?
did you want to say something, Neil?
Yes, please, if it's okay with you, Mayor Smith.
No, I don't want you saying anything. Go ahead.
First off, thank you everybody for your glowing words. This job is the job of a lifetime for me. It's one I worked very hard over a 20-year period to get to, and I'm pleased that I've landed here. I'm enjoying the job. Some days the job's bigger than me, but I have a really good staff to lean on, and we work really, really well together. And I believe that we all work together as a group. You as our policy setting body, and the city staff, and carrying out those policies on your behalf. And so it's a job I look to continue to do for the rest of my career. That said, I wish we weren't in the financial straits that we're at the front end of now, because I really would like the opportunity to accept a merit raise, but that's not the time we're in. So I'm prepared to take 3 steps. The first of which is to not accept any merit raise that you might have wanted to offer me today. So please don't do that. The second thing is that I want to waive the COLA that would be coming to me starting roughly the 1st of July, again, as a cost-saving measure. And then the third piece is that I will take a 5% pay cut starting with our next pay period through all of fiscal year 21. Again, in acknowledging that we are at the front end of some hard times. We are having conversations across our city with all of our employees and employee groups about cuts, with in concept a goal being that perhaps if we can as a group all suffer a little bit, that we can get to the other side of this thing with our programs all whole and complete, and not had to make any really, really tough decisions. And I believe that that kind of message needs to start near the top of the organization. So I am taking that step today, and forward we go. But thank you for your feedback. Thank you again for participating in the 360 review that we all did as part of my ICMA certification. And I look forward to working for you in the years to come. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Neil. Okay, I'm looking for a motion to extend Neil's contract by 1 year. Mr. Lawson.
I'll make the motion to extend Neil's contract by 1 year. Do I need to read out the terms, or can we use the terms that are our presentation?
I don't think we need to read them, do we, Lisa? The terms are, Lisa, you're muted. There you go.
I actually am unsure, but I see our city attorney on there.
Chet, do we need to?
That's fine. The contract's been published. It's all on the record, so that's fine.
Okay. So we have a motion from Mr. Lawson. Looking for a second?
I'll second.
There. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Congratulations, Neil.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I don't think we have to vote on your other concessions. Is that
No.
right, Chet? No, we don't have to vote on that.
That's right. That's right.
They're voluntary.
You considered it, a no vote would be the same as a denial, so.
Okay. All right. Moving on here. Where am I? We are on comments from the public. I'll open up public comment period now. Lisa, is there anybody on the line?
As a reminder, if you would like to participate in public comment for this item, please press *9 from your telephone or indicate your desire to speak by raising your hand from your computer. And I'm not showing anybody, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, then I'll close the public comment, bring it back to the council for comments from the mayor, city council, city manager, and I'll make a quick comment. I think the governor is on right now, either TV or YouTube, talking about.
He canceled.
He did?
Yeah.
Well, he's not doing, I understand he's not doing a live press conference that he is, he did a pre-recorded message that should be, I think on channel 2.
Okay, so that's what's going on now. Comments from the
council,
Mr. Lawson.
So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to voluntarily, this is how I started my career out, but I'm going to voluntarily take a 5% decrease in my salary for fiscal year 21. And I'd like to, whatever we have to do to make that happen, Mindy, let's make arrangements for that.
Okay. Ms. Bybee?
I would also like to offer a minimum 5% cut to match our city managers. I appreciate his leadership, and the leadership starts at the top. And I think it's something I would like to revisit as we move through the year, if that 5% is sufficient, or if we have to come back and it has to be more than that, or we move 6 months down the line and we don't. But I would like to match the 5% offer right now on my salary for the immediate future.
Mr. Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the comments. However, this is comments from the city council and city manager at this point in time. It's not an agendized item. I think if anything formal comes about pursuant to these requests, it should be considered as an agenda item. That way the council has the opportunity to voluntarily relinquish whatever they're entitled to. But we do have some property rights here, and I think it should be done in a more formal setting.
Chet, I don't believe that they can make a motion to cut the council's pay. I think they can, because it's always voluntary.
It is voluntary, but again, it's not on the agenda.
Right.
It should be agendized any way you want to do it. If you want to voluntarily take it, approve it, that's fine. I don't know what the mechanics are with our CFO, and coming out of the blue like this at the end of a long agenda item, I mean, at a long council meeting, I think it would be better to do it in a more formal setting.
Okay. All right. Mr. Kreutz?
Absolutely. We will bring this back as an agenda item for the council to take formal action on. But Chet, does that preclude the council members from indicating what it is they're interested in seeing as we go forward?
No. I mean, they've done a very successful job of indicating that, but before anybody's salary is cut, I think it should be presented as during another city council meeting. Obviously, when it comes to pay, they cannot unilaterally, up their pay. And I think the same principles would apply for unilaterally dropping their pay or relinquishing a percentage of their pay. I think it's fantastic that we have a group of elected leaders that are willing to even consider this, but before anybody's pay is cut, I would ask our CFO what mechanics he has to go through. This caught me totally by surprise, so that's why I'm opining the way I am at this point in time.
Well, thank
You
you very
know,
much for that
during
clarification.
2006 or 2007, 8, 9, where we all took pay cuts, we did it individually with a form. I think we got it from HR to facilitate that. Isn't that right, Mindy?
Yes, each of the council members and the mayor filled out a form, indicated what kind of pay cut they would like to give, and then sent it into HR, and then we made it happen.
Okay, because they could all be different. Mr.
They
Dare?
could all be different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say I'll echo the same, and in the sense of what we need to do and walk forward. I think I also just kind of want to say at large, you know, to all our city staff and everybody. I mean, there's sacrifice that I think happens on a regular day from our first responders to our public works to you name it. And obviously, we're asking people to consider a little more sacrifice right now. But it is our goal, at least my goal, if I had anything. But it sounds like from what I'm hearing across the board, is that we don't have to do huge cuts. Maybe if everyone hurts a little bit, we can walk through this thing and come out pretty much unscathed and move forward and get back into the business of what we do. But I would just really encourage, I don't know, I go out and I just reach out to all of from first responders to the whole city, just as we walk forward, just know that we're willing to do this together, and hopefully they'll join us in that as well.
You know, I'll go ahead and make a comment because I wasn't expecting to do this today, but you know, we just came off of 3 or 4 months where most definitely probably some of our city employees, their spouse lost their job, so their pay was already cut. And so now we're asking the city employees to take a 2% pay reduction. You know, some of our council members want to take a 5 to 10% pay reduction when many of the city employees already make more money than the council member does. If you want to be a hero, write a weekly check for the difference between 2% and whatever amount you're comfortable with taking. That money can be used for our employees that may have a problem paying their mortgage or have bills. Set up your own account. You don't have to be a hero and take 5 or 10%. We're asking everybody to take a 2% cut. And if that's what you're comfortable with, take a 2% cut. Any other comments? Mr. Kreutz.
I would like to announce that the city's department heads are going to follow my suit and not accept merit COLA and take a 5% pay cut through fiscal year 21 as well.
And the city council is not taking a raise because the county commission is. So that's 2.8% you're giving up right there. Okay, any more comments? Okay, without objection, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, don't go anywhere.
Oh, that's right.
I'll be fast. I need to call to order the Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting of May 26, 2020 with a roll call.
Chairperson Bybee.
Here.
Agency members Abbott.
Here.
Lawson.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Dare.
Here.
Chief Legal Officer Adams.
Here.
Chief Administrative Officer Kreutz.
Sorry.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
We can see you.
Yeah.
Item number 3, public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
And if there is anybody wishing to have public comment during this time, please press *9 from your touch tone telephone or indicate your desire to speak by raising your hand from your computer. And I'm showing none.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item number 4.1, approval of the agenda. I have a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to.
Second.
Agency member Smith, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Agency member Dare. Okay, say aye.
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 I'm sorry. My brain isn't even working anymore. Item number 5.1, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the minutes of the Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting of April 27th, 2020. Do I have any corrections, additions, or a motion to approve the minutes? Anyone?
Motion to approve.
Agency member Anderson, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, agency member Smith. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6.1, consideration, possible acceptance of the report of the claims and bills approved for payment and appropriation transfers for the period of April 15th, 2020 through May 12th, 2020 for possible action. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve by agency member Dare. Do I have a second?
Second, Abbott.
I have a second, agency member Abbott. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 6.2, public hearing. As required by NRS 354596 to allow public comment on the tentative budgets for the redevelopment agencies of the City of Sparks areas 1 and 2 for fiscal year 2020-2021.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the agency. This is Jeff Kronk again, your Chief Financial Officer. I know we've had a long meeting, so I'll keep this brief, but this process mirrors what we did for the city. And by Nevada law, we're required to hold a public hearing on the tentative budget, again, which was filed for the redevelopment agency on April 15th. So we just need to see if there's any public comment on that piece, which is attached to your agenda. Again, no action is required on this item.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
And if anybody is wishing to speak on this item, please press *9 on your telephone or indicate your desire to speak by raising your hand from your computer. And I'm showing none.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 6.3, consideration and possible adoption of the final budget for the redevelopment agency of the City of Sparks areas 1 and 2 for fiscal year 2020-2021 for possible action.
Thank you again, Madam Chairwoman and members of the agency. Again, this is Jeff Kronk, your Chief Financial Officer. This is substantially less complicated than the cities because, again, the redevelopment agencies are primarily funded through property taxes, and property taxes are really not expected to be hit, if you will, related to this COVID for fiscal environment for several years, if at all. So again, these budgets are substantially less complicated. The only items that are included in the budget are items that we have already presented to you with again, what we call the city manager or the agency administrative officers' recommendations, which include the capital items related to downtown, the straightening of the Avenue of the Oaks, and then also debt service. That's essentially the large items that are included in the redevelopment agency budget for fiscal 21. So with that, I will be happy to address any questions you may have.
Okay, does anyone have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll move to approve, Abbott.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the final budget for the redevelopment agency 1 and 2, fiscal year 2020-2021 by agency member Abbott, second by agency member Smith. Did you second it, Ron?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any further comments? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Council approves unanimously. Item 7.
Thank you.
7.1, comments from the public. Madam Clerk, do we have any comments from the public?
And for the last time today, if there are any anybody wishing to speak during the public comment period, please press *9 from your telephone or indicate your desire to speak by raising your hand on your computer. And I am showing none.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 7.2, comments from the agency and Chief Administrative Officer. Any comments? I'd like to say thanks for hanging in there so long today. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Bye.
Good one all. Thanks.